Hello everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. Thank you guys for joining me. Happy Sunday. My name's Candice Marie. I am back at it with your Sunday astro weather. And this is going to be for the week of January 18th through the 25th, 2025. Major headlines. We have got Mars that will be storming into the sign of Aquarius. And everything this week feels electric, very unpredictable, lots of pressure cooker moments. But it's all about deep transformation. Now, I'm calling this Mars enters Aquarius. We've got intensity, innovation, and major power shifts this week. Few quick love notes before we get into the video. If this video resonates with you guys and you found it helpful, please do give me a thumbs up, like the video, consider sharing on your socials. While you're there, follow me on X at BTVAstro. And also, please do subscribe to the channel. Click the bell button below so you get alerts for my other videos throughout the week. I'm here on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, and Sundays using tarot and astrology to make sense of what's going on in the cosmos. Truly helps the channel grow, so I really appreciate it, so that way we can get this out to more people. And drop me a comment below. Let me know your rising sign. Where is all this transformative, powerful energy taking place in your chart? I do read all of the comments. I try to get back to you guys if I can, and I love connecting with you all. And this Friday, I'm going to be live on the channel at 6 o'clock p.m. Central. That'll be 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be live doing tarot readings. So bring your questions, bring some snacks, come and hang out with us on Friday night. I'll be pulling cards in real time and answering your guys' questions. All right, we got quite the week. And I'm sure you guys hear this a lot. Like sometimes I'll be like, wow, there's a lot going on. But I would have to say this is probably a very standout week in the astrology of the entire year, in my opinion. And we'll get into why. We're definitely going to do a deep dive and talk a little bit about some of the Mars and Aquarius themes, but there's some other stuff that's kind of going on. So yes, this video, the major headline is Mars and Aquarius. We're going to see that ingress happening on January 23rd, and it is marching straight into a conjunction with Pluto and Aquarius at 3 degrees on the 27th. Now this means that it's a showdown with the Lord of the underworld, Hades. It's raw power. It's also really about kind of bringing out some kind of buried truth and sudden breakthroughs or breakdowns happening. We're going to be talking about some of the intense kind of collective activation that's going to happen. You're going to see this out in the world when it comes to major tech innovations, things that are going on with crypto markets, major social activism type movements, and obviously some major hidden scandals that are starting to kind of gear up in real time. Now, Mercury and Venus will also be in Aquarius this week, so you're going to be seeing that. And then the Sun is actually going to join on the 19th, and it's going to be the beginning of Aquarius season. Honestly, to me, it kind of feels like a lightning strike of an awakening for the collective, but you might be feeling that kind of really focused in on one particular area of your chart. So pull your chart out, whether you guys have it on an app or on software, or if you've got it on paper, take a look at Aquarius, because this is where all the action is happening pretty much now all the way through next month. Now, I'm expecting that there can be some sudden insights with Mercury and Aquarius. We're also going to see that this is about radical conversations and a strong urge to break free from old patterns, because that's really what Aquarius is about. It's about kind of rebelling against the norms. But obviously Pluto is the gatekeeper. So we see that Pluto's presence is adding a lot of depth. It's also adding a lot of anger, a lot of frustration, and potentially some dangerous and explosive situations this week. Now with Pluto, we deal with power struggles. We see that there is some kind of obsessiveness that can be happening also. And it's really going to be about transforming rage and finding a way to transmute some of that energy, because if it surfaces and we're not conscious, it can turn into a nasty situation. So before I even get into the Mars stuff, I just want to give you guys a little bit of like tips for working with some of the Pluto conjunctions that you're going to see this week, because all week they're going to be happening. Okay, so we're going to see Venus come into conjunction with Pluto. We're going to see Mercury come into conjunction with Pluto. The Sun's going to hit Pluto. And then by the end of the week, Mars is going to be in Aquarius, and it's coming into conjunction with Pluto, extending some of that intensity into what will be next week's astro weather. But this is really a very, very, very powerful cluster of planets that are going to be kind of hanging around Pluto. So, you know, honestly, I would have to say, as somebody who natally I have Sun, Mercury, Mars, and Pluto all in the same sign, and they are within range of each other by conjunction. I feel like I live with this energy every day. It's not in Aquarius, it is in Scorpio, so it isn't like a fixed sign. But I find that, oftentimes I find myself kind of like scorping out or like feeling the pressure. And then I think, okay, am I going to give into the fear, or what's the worst thing that could happen? You guys have all seen probably The Hangover, right? I think it's the second one, but where Mr. Chow is kind of sitting there after they've had like that crazy adventure. And he's like, but did you die? That voice kind of plays in my head. So maybe a little humor will kind of help get through some of these transits this week. But there's going to be a bunch of like little mini deaths and transformations or crisis that's going to happen as these planets are kind of aligning with Pluto and Aquarius. Sounds a little morbid, but obviously it gets me through some of my more kind of testy transits. So try it out, see if it helps you. But I've got a laundry list of things that would be recommendations that you want to follow this week into next week. All right. So pull out your red markers, write some of these things down. You're going to have to remind yourself of this stuff. Number one is going to be do not blow up. Okay. And I want you guys to understand that when planets are coming into conjunction, it is this fusion that is happening. And so Pluto is going to be illuminating and kind of showing the darker side, all the gunk that's kind of emerging and being expressed in the collective, and it can get ugly. So what you want to do is when you see some of this stuff happening, you want to pause, you want to breathe. Obviously this is happening in Aquarius, so it's going to be about kind of regulating our nervous system, and breathe deeply and then come back to your body, right? Breath is one of the things that can kind of ground us and keep us kind of grounded in situations where we feel like there's all this kind of static that's around us. I also want you guys to slow down this week, right? No speeding, literally or figuratively, because when Mars is kind of involved in conjunctions to Pluto, we can see that there can be some explosive situations due to speed, due to heat, anything that deals with anger or anything that's like combustible. And we want to avoid also any frantic money moves. Watching planets come in conjunction with Pluto can definitely create major fear. There can also be some like FOMO. So we could see that there could be people who are frantically trying to buy something, trying to sell something. So big investments or gambling this week, you want to be really careful and make sure that you're not operating out of fear when it comes to making those decisions. I also want you guys to watch your words, all right? So everything feels very permanent when it's coming into conjunction with Pluto, and it can mean that we say some things, we do some things, we express some things that are going to be difficult to actually take back. And obviously we don't want to resist what's clearly ending. Whenever I think of Pluto transits, I kind of think of like, my experience just kind of going to a funeral. When I went to my funeral for my grandfather, my dad's dad, I'll never forget, and he's an Aquarius, he has Sun in Aquarius, so this is a perfect example. When everybody showed up to the wake, everybody was, eating all of the hors d'oeuvres, and they were all in black, and everybody was having like the traditional kind of wake, and we were getting ready to sit down and then, give our kind of speech about what was happening with my grandfather's passing and like honoring him. My dad showed up in a Hawaiian shirt and decided that he wanted to go against the norms of, traditional kind of mourning, and he wanted to talk more about his life and talk more about celebrating him, and didn't want to kind of focus too much on the death. Instead, it's more about celebrating the transition and what he actually brings into our lives. So think of this as an opportunity for you to either go, okay, am I going to be clutching onto this thing that I know is no longer here? It's not viable. It's not working. It's breaking down. I'm resisting, and it can get kind of dramatic. Or am I going to let go and be free? So we want to resist. We don't want to resist what's clearly ending. Maybe that means you have to kind of ask yourself like, okay, what's the worst thing that could happen if I let this go? Or if I let this situation play out? Or if I just allow this to be what it is and observe? Stay away from angry crowds this week. And it's going to go into next week too. Stay away from major protests if you guys can help it. Stay away from busy roadways. Be careful if you're working with sharp objects or anything that deals with high heat situations, or things that can be like sharp, or things that are quick moving. And I'll get into that in a second. You want to ground yourself. I really recommend, if you're a rock hound and you happen to have a piece of shungite, whether it's a bracelet, a necklace, if it's something that you want to keep in your bag or your pocket, wear your shungite this week. Black tourmaline can also be great. Onyx can be really great. Anything that is going to be dark, and something that can kind of protect you from some of like the frequencies and the things that are going to kind of be in the air. I'm stocking up on this because I know that the psychic static is going to be loud. I've been wearing shungite pretty regularly like the last year or two since Pluto ingressed into Aquarius, but I think this is going to be a time where we all need a little bit more kind of extra spiritual Teflon or like armor. So definitely if you have some, consider wearing it. And be careful with what you're posting online. Be careful what you're talking about in live streams. If you're on TikTok, if you're on Instagram or social media, be mindful that Pluto at 3 degrees of Aquarius does have a little bit of like a permanent record vibe. So there could be records of things that are being said that are either, happening right now that are going to play out in, important situations in the future that can be damning, or stuff that's kind of coming up from the past. Really good week to be doing shadow work. So if you want to be journaling your fears and frustrations and then sit down and burn the piece of paper, that is a very simple, very powerful ritual, especially because this is happening in an air sign. So it's about our intellect, what we're thinking about, what we're saying. And also it's at a 3. We're seeing a lot of the conjunctions to Pluto at a 3. So it's what we write, what we think, what we say, and the power of words, and that we can actually transmute some of this fear and really kind of celebrate some of the endings, because it's like the Tower card. It's making room for something new that's going to be built. Consider logging off the internet. Obviously, if you guys want to watch my videos or other videos that you feel like are going to be really helpful in navigating the energies, maybe you're listening to binaural beats or group meditations, that's fine. But be mindful of the media you're consuming this week, what you're seeing on social media, what you're seeing on your local news. There's going to be a lot of situations that are going to look really ugly. I'm just going to tell you guys this in advance. And you're going to see a lot of just static, and probably a lot of people who are like in their echo chambers online that are going to be very angry and very divisive. So don't follow the crowd. Consider just taking a brief social media break. I think that once we see some of the events play out over the next week and a half or two, then we are going down the rabbit hole after all the explosive events that take place with the conjunctions to Pluto, leading us into next month when we have a solar eclipse in Aquarius. So we are going to start to see kind of this new beginning that's going to be happening in regards to the collective. Watch for crypto scams. I think we can see that. We can see major exchange glitches that can be taking place in this next week, or some very sudden market volatility. But the full truth, like I said, is not going to emerge until the eclipse. So we can't really be reacting and responding to things until we're getting closer to that in mid-February. Until then, conspiracy theories will be everywhere, so your tinfoil hats are optional, but discernment is mandatory this week. If you guys don't believe me that this energy is real, I know a lot of you guys have been watching my content for quite some time, but I was thinking back to the last time that we had this similar conjunction that had Mars and Mercury and Venus all in the same sign with Pluto in Aquarius, and this was actually taking place in 2024. So if you guys go back and you look at my videos in the end of January into the beginning of February of 2024, weeks before we had the Super Bowl parade that was for the Chiefs, I warned and I told people there's going to be violence in crowds. You are going to be seeing crowds that are going to have some kind of conflict, or somebody's going to get hurt, or people are going to get killed. And we saw the post Super Bowl parade shooting that happened, and like a bunch of people were gathering to celebrate the Chiefs win, and like people got hurt and injured. So I really feel like this is very similar. I'm not saying it's going to manifest in the exact same way, but during that same time when we saw some similar conjunctions, there were devastating wildfires that took place in Chile. So Pluto can destroy, Mars can kind of bring heat, and it can bring a lot of wind that can kind of destroy stuff. We also saw some deadly landslides that happened in the Philippines, and that was also a time in February of 24 that we saw massive institutional money flowing into the market for cryptocurrencies. This was like the beginning of the Bitcoin ETFs, and the S&P 500 hit a 5,000 point milestone. Now, these are all classic Aquarius themes, right? Sudden collective events, tech and finance breakthroughs, humanitarian crisis, and obviously innovation kind of surges. So especially when Mercury and Venus are in Aquarius, that's really going to kind of amplify this particular signal. So we're walking into some of the same kind of archetypal storm. So, just know that Pluto is now fully settled in Aquarius. So I think over the next week, we're going to see some unprecedented things that are kind of taking place. There has been some kind of buzz on the internet, people talking about whether or not, if there is going to continue to be a lot of this intensity going on throughout the United States and major cities in regards to protest against the ICE raids that are happening, whether you're for or against it. I'm not getting involved in that. But this reminds me of that there is some kind of threat to the system, and people are getting angry, and we're seeing violence that's happening in crowds. And if somebody were to get hurt, I think it would be like a real national, like brouhaha. I think it would be, and we've seen that in recent weeks. Whether it's, ICE officers, local police officers, protesters, I do think that there is a possibility, because we've seen similar transits that actually happened in the 1990s, right around the time that we had the Rodney King riots. They actually had the Insurrection Act that they moved on. So I'm wondering, are we going to see something similar in this next week? Is there going to be talk about whether or not that's going to happen to prevent some potential future violence? So we'll see what happens. Just be really mindful, keep your head on a swivel, be mindful if you're going to be around groups of people and stuff, because it's going to be quite intense. So let's get into talking more a little bit about Mars in Aquarius. Basically, we're going to see Mars moving into this sign from January 23rd to March 2nd, 2026. Venus is in Aquarius the same day, so we're going to see, some of the same kind of transits that are happening side by side. And then Mercury is going to be soon to follow. Now, this will be impacting those of you guys who are ruled by Mars the most. So if you're an Aquarius rising, obviously Mars is in your sign, so it's going to be very potent for you over the next 2 weeks. But my Aries risings and my Scorpio risings, you guys are experiencing your Mars, your ruler Mars moving into a new sign. So it's on the move. That means there's another area of your chart that's getting kind of lit up. And obviously it's meeting with some heavy energy to Pluto. So be mindful of that. This is going to also be really happening and impacting those of you guys who are Aquarius placement, about 0 to 5 degrees of Aquarius, the strongest, as well as, I would say, the fixed signs. So Taurus, Leo, and Scorpio risings. Be mindful if you have anything between 0 and 5 degrees, because you guys are experiencing some of the squares or the oppositions. That's going to also kind of put you in the pressure cooker. Now, Mars, in mundane astrology, this is the planet that is strongly associated with Aries as well as Scorpio. Mars represents action. It can be seen as action connected to conflict. It can be about military kind of movement. It is about aggression. It's also about getting somewhere and being the first. So we have to kind of see some kind of initiative that's kind of being brought forth in the Aquarius energy of our chart. And this is a planet that deals with heat, okay? So it can represent things that are kind of combusting, because obviously Aquarius is associated with Uranus. And in mundane charts, it does rule accidents. It's connected to violence, military, machinery, and pioneering energy. Now, Mars goes through this sign roughly every 2 years. So it's been since 2024 that we've seen this particular transit. And Aquarius is the 11th sign of the Zodiac. It's fixed air. You guys know that. I've been talking a lot about planets moving through this sign. And it is known for innovation. It's also known for technology and humanitarianism. But it also has a reputation for being a little rebellious. We see a lot of action in groups when Mars goes through this sign, a lot of networking opportunities. There's also a huge focus on anything that's about innovations. So AI, crypto, because of some of the connections to Uranus, which is the dispositor at the time of this ingress. But it can also be known for sudden detachment and being a little bit more aloof and more future oriented when it comes to how we're thinking. So Mars in Aquarius, what it feels like, at least in my opinion, is like kind of being cool-headed when the pressure is on, when there is conflict that's going on with other people. It knows how to navigate, it knows how to be a leader and how to instruct a team. It's also really known for being courageous, but not being too in your face about it. And it's for fighting for the collective, really, collective beliefs, collective views. And it may manifest as intellectual battles. It can also mean that there are some sudden breakthroughs that are happening in the tech or science world. But keep in mind that being detached from anger allows us to kind of transmute some of the heavier energies with the conjunction with Pluto. And it can turn cold. So it can mean that instead of getting angry, it just kind of detaches and it kind of cuts social networks, or it cuts connections or ties to people. And it's really urging us to revolutionize our systems. Now, for key astrological context, this is connected to Uranus, because Uranus is the modern day ruler of Aquarius. So as all these planets are moving through Aquarius, I've been keeping an eye on Uranus. It's getting ready to wake up soon and come out of its retrograde. And at some point throughout this Mars transit, it will. And then it's going to pack a little bit more of a punch. And right towards the end of all of the Aquarius transits and also the solar eclipse next month, we are going to be seeing some squares to Uranus and Taurus. So it's definitely going to make some certain markets, certain banks, financial sectors, even parts of the world like rock, rattle, and roll. So we're going to see some pretty eruptive events. Now, because it's the dispositor of Mars, it means that there is this tension between fixed Earth stability and Aquarius kind of disruption and the necessary change for the future. So that's why I'm predicting there's going to be some shocks in finance, but we can also see some food supply shortages. We can also see that there can be some real kind of chaos revolving around physical resources. Now, with Mars in Aquarius, it's also the dispositor of Chiron and Aries. And at some point it will sextile Chiron. That'll be one of the friendlier kind of aspects that you're going to see throughout this Mars transit. And Chiron is sitting right now at 22 degrees. So it's going to be moving up to 23, 24. And with this connection to Chiron, it basically means that it's going to be helping us focus on the collective action that we can take to help kind of heal some of our own personal wounds or identity issues. Now, it can work both ways too. We can see there's online kind of movements and things that are inspiring individuals, but we can also see that there can be a lot of polarization going on with Pluto conjunctions, and some individuals who feel like they have been kind of cast out of society, or they're kind of different, or they're not a part of the mainstream, or they're not being represented. It can also like further radicalize people and get people to be very angry. It can also create injuries for individuals, particularly, I would say, Mars in Aquarius, I think, would be more if we're going to see crowds that are getting pepper sprayed or getting gassed. And then obviously all the sinus kind of related issues with burning and stuff with the face can be Chiron and Aries. It can also indicate that there's the potential for individuals to suffer head-on collisions, especially if there's any chaos around like crowds, and also potential issues with head wounds. So be very, very careful with these transits. Now, Mars will be the dispositor also for the up and coming Saturn and Neptune conjunction. That'll be happening on February 20th. That's when it's exact at 0 degrees of Aries. This means that Mars is going to be influencing some of the blurring of the boundaries around authority. Some people may not know who to trust or who's in charge or who's the leader. We may also see individuals rise up and say that they're going to be getting more involved in certain things that are going on with politics or local government or certain kind of movements. And they're really focusing on their ideals, but we know that Saturn and Neptune, when it comes together, one planet, one structure, the other one wants to kind of dissolve things. And Aries is a sign that deals with aggression. So you could see a lot of people that are getting angry about stuff that's kind of going on. And then there is going to be more kind of a number of people, I think, that are going to be out in the streets across the globe. Now, I don't think that the mainstream media is going to fully be broadcasting some of these revolutions that are going on. You guys are going to have to do your research and go and find some independent media, but just take a look at what's going on outside of just your community or your country, your bubble. Think bigger, because we see that Saturn and Neptune aligning in Aries means that a lot of individuals will be waking up and realizing that there is this kind of revolutionary uproar that's taking place across the globe. Now, I do think that there is potential also for some like major ideological conflicts, also spiritual warfare. I think that's pretty much Saturn and Neptune in a nutshell. So we have to kind of see what happens. Usually history does rhyme. It doesn't always repeat exactly, but these are some very, very, very important kind of themes that are going to be connected to Mars throughout its trek in Aquarius. Now I'm going to show you guys some of the more notable, I think, transits that'll be taking place with this. And similar to the other Aquarius transit videos, there's kind of like a bookend where you see at the beginning of the transit, planets hit Pluto when they become kind of like reborn, or there is that mini kind of crisis that happens, or something, dramatic happens, or there is some shocking truth that comes out. And then things are pretty calm. It starts to sextile Chiron, so then we can start to integrate, we can heal. Then towards the end of the transit, you're going to see that it's going to be forming hard squares to Uranus and Taurus, and then it's going to kind of kick on the back end. So really intense at first, and then dramatic changes right at the end. So if you guys are looking for those dates for the Mars and Aquarius transits, click the description below. You can find that. You can also find all the dates for the astro weather that I'm going to be going throughout this presentation. And then if you stay tuned to the end of my video, I'll also take you through Mars through the 12 rising signs and kind of talk about what's happening, the houses Mars rules in your chart, and what to be expecting over the next 6 weeks or so. So we're going to start first with the 23rd. So it does happen this week. And on the 23rd, Mars goes into Aquarius. Okay, so if you guys have been following, you're kind of watching on Sunday. So we're coming into like that new moon energy where Mars has been kind of sextiling Saturn and Neptune, and we're about really wrapping things up. That's really what's kind of happening. At least here in the Northern Hemisphere, you know, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces season, like we're still in, you know, like the winter. We're not really at the new year. Things don't really feel like it's going to be the new year, probably until we're getting to the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in February. And then definitely when we get into April, things are going to be brand new. You're going to see a lot of really different energies that are going to be taking place. But when Mars moves into 0 degrees of Aquarius on the 23rd, the energy shifts. So we're going to notice that the energy is shifting from this kind of structured, kind of militant, you know, super busy working type of energy that we've seen in Capricorn, and it's going to be moving to something that is going to be more free. So it's almost like there's a little bit more air. Usually we see a lot more people that are getting together, socializing, going to parties, you know, working out, like doing Mars related things with other people. So there's this huge focus on our goals, our social connections, our networking opportunities, and just kind of getting together and being with like-minded others. Now, you may start, and I've seen this, as planets are now starting to get really close to Pluto. I'm already starting to feel like the Venus conjunction. So you guys may be feeling this all week because we're going to have, you know, several planets that are going to be within range of Pluto. And then Mars is going to be the last one to follow. So we call this a stellium. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 planets that are going to be moving through Aquarius now. It's hard to kind of miss the energy in that area of your chart. Just watch for the intensity to really start building from the 23rd on. And that's because we're going to see Mars and Pluto that will be conjunct on the 27th at 3 degrees of Aquarius. So obviously if you have anything, I would say 0 to 5 degrees of Aquarius, personal planet, rising, sun or moon, definitely pay attention. Mars is a malefic, so it does represent, like I said, accidents, aggression, conflict, and heat. And it's all building off of this influence with Uranus and Taurus. And if you notice, when Mars makes the conjunction to Pluto, the moon is making a conjunction to Uranus. Okay, so it is suggesting that there is going to be some kind of dramatic, you know, kind of changes happening with our values, our resources, with banking, with markets, with crypto, all of that stuff. And it's just coming out of the first quarter square as well. Focusing more on like the Mars conjunction, it doesn't look like it's going to be exact because it's going to be 3 degrees and change. So it's going to be exact closer to the kind of early evening on January 27th. And this is peak intensity. You've got this combo of Pluto and also Mars kind of merging with each other. We can see this materialize as power grabs. We can also see some massive exposés that are happening, some really dramatic news coming out of independent media or new media groups that are kind of binding together and working together. We can also see some major tech disruptions, especially with anything connected to transportation. So think like local transportation, EV vehicles, things that are connected also to cell phones. I know this last week we had another major outage with Verizon. I'm not a Verizon user, but I did get texts for some reason that I was being told by my carrier that there was outages. But yeah, I think this is like the third like major outage that Verizon has had. So I'm wondering, is there going to be some other issues, or is there some stuff that's going to come out that's kind of like, well, why was this happening? What is it connected to? I also think that we can see possible collective unrest. Unfortunately, when we've seen this in previous, kind of times, that's how it has manifested. It will be interesting to watch when the conjunction is happening, because the moon is also going into Gemini. So it's going to be forming a trine to Mars and Pluto. So it does have a little bit of an outlet. And this will be kind of connected to Mercury, which is conjunct Venus. So I think there's going to be news spreading very fast about some kind of like new opportunities for people to be investing in like tech. There's going to be a lot of economists or probably analysts that are going to be covering certain patterns and things that are going to be happening with kind of tech stocks as well. But this is the day that you need to really be mindful of your words, because Gemini is connected to that 3 degrees. And I read you guys the Sabian symbol already for 4. So if you guys haven't already seen the Venus in Aquarius, go and check that out, because I do talk about that. But I will remind you guys what 3s are, because you're going to see this degree theory in action. So 3, 15, and 27 always connects and correlates with Gemini. So even though it's in Aquarius, and you'll see it as it's the internet, it's tech, it's things connected to, to social activists, to new networks and things kind of going on with the people. it will take on that Gemini energy. So it's going to have the themes of what we write, what we say, what we kind of talk about. It's also connected to traffic, street, cars, and all means of transportation in the street. Short trips, crossroads, bus stops, bus drivers, traffic jams, mechanics, and bridges. Newspapers, journalists, magazines, newsstands, books, and bookstores. Conversations, communication, phone, internet, stamps, post offices, anything that deals with mutual understanding. Educated people, intellectuals, literature, writers. Shop assistants, commerce, trade, announcers, radio, television, corridors, staircases, balconies, neighborhoods, personal documents like ID, passports, and driver's licenses, and to be a matchmaker, language, translation, interpreters, children, kindergarten, elementary school, pairs, twins or doubles, nicknames, and brothers or sisters. Okay, so I know it's a little weird, but somehow that's going to play a role in what we see kind of like manifesting. And so when we look at that through the lens of Mars and Pluto, I really feel like there can be some individuals, because of the connection to now Neptune and Aries, which this is influencing now because Neptune will just have gone back into that sign, where individuals are potentially getting hurt or becoming disillusioned because they are following the crowd. And if you are following the crowd or getting involved with like angry mobs, you know, it's not the time to be doing that. We will see some of this energy kind of come back, I think, again in April of this year, when Saturn and Mars and Neptune are all kind of moving through Aries again. So 2026 has like these kind of periods where there's just a lot of intense pressure and things start to kind of subside. We are now entering into one of those periods as soon as Mars and Pluto are coming into conjunction. And this conjunction will reverberate outwards. We are going to see down the road, when Mars goes through Taurus later this year and it squares out, it's going to bring up some of these themes. When it goes into Leo, it's going to bring up some of these themes. When it goes into retrograde, it's going to bring up some of these themes in early 2027. So it's kind of like a seeding moment. I do think that I expect that there can be some major news about like what a independent journalist is exposing about something connected to groups. And kind of like infiltration, or people who are kind of going and sitting in on panels. So I wonder if we're going to be hearing about people who are, getting word back from things that are happening in Europe, or, groups that are meeting like the World Economic Forum, or things that are being kind of discussed and talked about at Davos, and finding out that some of this information is like starting to kind of come up. And recently, not to freak you guys out, but something that kind of freaked me out was I was looking through Twitter and they were posting things talking about how they were doing the budgeting for Congress. And they were talking about all of like the budget that was going to be connected to, I think, like stuff with war. And there was all of these conversations and like documents that were published where they were saying basically there's now like they're almost getting like things registered that are going to be frequency devices that can be used for like weapons of war, right? And it sounds crazy, but they're basically talking about it out in the open, that it's like, yeah, this needs to be a part of the budget. Okay, so in the future, throughout the next couple of years, like the way that we actually deal with war is going to be completely rewritten. Saturn and Neptune and Aries can mean that there can be, kind of covert things that can be happening. That's going to be wars on individuals that can be frequency related, or things that are impacting memory, or things that are impacting people's brains or like their minds. And also we can see that there is going to be much more of an emphasis, I think, in finding ways to handle crowd control, right? And so we're going to probably see some of this stuff. They did discuss that when they talked about how they, pretty much abducted and arrested and extradited the Prime Minister of Venezuela. They were saying that they used devices when they went to go and get him, and like the soldiers didn't know what was happening, who was protecting him, and they fell at the ground and they were like bleeding and like bleeding out of their face. I know, probably TMI. And they didn't know what had hit them. So there's things that are going to start being utilized in war or potentially on the public that we cannot see. That's very Saturn and Neptune. So I'm hoping that's not the case. Like, I'm tapping on wood as I say this, but I'm going to tell you guys, be very, very careful about following the crowds over the next week or two, because you're going to see that there are going to be some things that there's going to be instigators and people who are going to be trying to create problems to really kind of further inflame some of the stuff that's going on right now. Now on to the next transit. This will be February the 3rd. And this is when Mars is going to inconjunct the South Node. Now this is not as obvious. It's going to be a little bit more kind of hidden. Obviously an inconjunct or a quincunx is when they're not seeing each other so clearly. And there's definitely something going on here because the moon is meeting with the south node. So it's also making the same inconjunct aspect to Mars. This will be happening at a 9. So it's definitely going to be talking about international kind of alignment or unions. It's also going to be talking about legal cases or things that are kind of dealing with college campuses, professors. It's got this kind of Sagittarius energy. And when it has the inconjunct, that friction is trying to release old problems when it comes to health and services. So there's probably going to be a bit of like an uproar about potential changes that are going to be happening with the healthcare system, or, you know, bringing about some kind of freedom to allow people to have more of a choice with where they're getting their healthcare, what it is that they're able to kind of take care of. Also, how tech and development of AI may potentially be disrupting more jobs. So we can notice some scheduling changes, especially, you know, if you're in any of these fields, there can be some big changes that's happening either with your schedule, and you could be seeing that there could be like a release of, you know, needing to work or working in a different way, or that there's new systems coming in to kind of help you become more productive. And then on the 12th, we're going to see Mars make another inconjunct, where it's going to inconjunct Jupiter in Cancer. And same aspect, kind of like agitating, not seeing things so clearly. This will be at a 14, so it's going to be more revolving around home, emotions, family. This could definitely be where some people are like, yeah, things are getting a little crazy in the city that I'm living in. You know, am I wanting to, you know, go out and be with friends, or, you know, socialize or do things, or am I wanting to kind of keep my butt at home? It can also mean that there is this overreach that's kind of going on when it comes to our emotional needs versus, you know, themes regarding our social life and our friends. And so there can be a lot of goals, there could be a lot of parties, gatherings, get-togethers, versus us kind of questioning whether or not we feel like emotionally we still want to, you know, like commit to some of the plans that we've made. So we can kind of overcommit ourselves in a way. So be mindful of that. And then we see on the 20th, this is not a Mars transit, but this is the day that Saturn and Neptune will align exactly at 0 degrees of Aries. So when that happens, this is also a seeding moment, and like something will happen because the moon's going to go through there, and then it's going to square Jupiter. So something will take place, but this is being ruled by Mars, and Mars is at 22 degrees of Aquarius. So 22 is a Capricorn degree. It does, I think, perhaps kind of discuss and talk about where we're going to see a lot more military mobilizations, also potentially where there may be something that's connected to the National Guard. It's also possible that we're going to be seeing like a lot of people that are going to be protesting and kind of against some of the things that are going on with some of the movements with the military. And unfortunately, you know, Aries deals with just like, you know, us individually, and with Saturn and Neptune going into Aries and then Mars following later this spring, a lot of people are going to have very strong opinions and reactions to what's changing when it comes to laws and regulations, what's changing when it comes to people's freedoms, or what they kind of do with their frustration, and whether or not people are going to be getting more involved, I think, in kind of taking action when it comes to kind of, you know, showing up and being like a leader in the world. That's the positive manifestation of that energy. But when this conjunction happens, Mars is kind of the highlight here. So it's possible that, you know, really what it's saying with that 23 degrees, because we round up. So the 23 degrees, Sabian symbol, is a man having overcome his passions teaches deep wisdom. So this is really suggesting mastery through crisis. And obviously with degree theory, 22 degrees is the kill or be killed degree. And it also deals with like this major culmination. So it's basically saying there's about to be this massive push into the future when it comes to new developments with agriculture, right? Uranus and Taurus, anything that deals with food, banking, money. And there's going to be this massive push for there to be some kind of change, I think probably with connections to, you know, either the Fed, the central bank, things that are going on also maybe with interest rates. So we'll see if there's going to be some kind of economic, you know, kind of pushback or potential, you know, issues with inflation, because I think that that's possible. Now on February 22nd, we see the first nice aspect, and this is going to be friendly. And that's because Mars is going to be making a sextile to Chiron. And honestly, this is like the only quote unquote like positive aspect that we are seeing happen. There are no trines, right? There is no real conjunction to, you know, any kind of positive planets throughout this transit, unfortunately. We saw most of the Mars-Venus conjunctions taking place mostly when it was in Capricorn. So when it comes into a sextile, this is like a friendly 60-degree energy. So it's kind of leaning on Chiron, and it can lean in a positive way where it's like, okay, now we have kind of maybe cleaned out our, Facebook friend list. Maybe we have decided that we want to join, an affiliation that we believe in. Maybe it's inspired us to start an online group. Maybe we're more gung-ho about our goals. Maybe networking has made us feel more included. But it can also mean that there is still this potential for getting kind of wrapped up in some of the wrong ideas or some of the wrong groups or following the crowd. That can lead to us feeling a little bit more different, estranged maybe from certain groups, marginalized, also kind of feeling victimized in some capacity as well. And 23 degrees is an Aquarius degree. This is like where the wheels fall off and then suddenly something like quickly accelerates. So we could see that there's like a lot of people who are suddenly feeling, okay, they're even more kind of isolated and alone because they have made so many changes with either their goals or with their social groups or online, adding into the Saturn and Neptune, which is still conjunct in Aries. So I think a lot of people over the next 2 to 4 months are going to find that they're feeling like they have to go something on their own. They have to go their own way. And some of you guys are going to feel like it's about going against the mainstream. Others are going to feel like it's about, doing something different than some of your friends and their interests. You'll have to see how it's kind of manifesting between Aries and Aquarius in your chart. But when this sextile happens, it's bringing an opportunity, I think, to really heal assertive wounds through some kind of group action. So I think that like where Aries is maybe a little less than confident with that Saturn and Neptune at the early degrees, where it's like, well, I have this dream, there's something I want to do, but like, how am I going to climb this mountain alone? Mars making that sextile is being like, hey, we can help you. Like, we can help you. We can build something together. We can create a business. We can create a community. And there is going to be some kind of team building that can really help ease some of the pain and isolation and potentially even like lack of confidence that we may be feeling with Chiron and Aries. So I like that aspect. And then the big one is going to be when Mars comes into a square with Uranus and Taurus. Now this is going to be happening right around February 27th. And this will happen at a Gemini degree. If you guys caught my other videos when I talk about how all these planets have to conjunct Pluto at 3, it's a Gemini degree. And then we've got, all of the planets squaring Uranus at a Gemini degree. So it's really reiterating where this is going to be causing pressure in how we communicate our values, how we socialize with people in the midst of like a lot of polarity and people who are very strongly, I think, entangled. A lot of the identity is entangled in their beliefs or their kind of political views or their religious views or their views on finance. And so there's a lot of like kind of butting heads with the squares. Squares are hard angles, so it basically means that it's bringing up the energy of Mars where something has to be confronted. This is also another dangerous aspect because you're dealing with Uranus, which could be kind of electric or volatile or unpredictable or unsteady. And then Mars squaring that is basically pushing pressure on Uranus where people can suddenly react. So I do think we will see other issues that deal with people speeding and being around crowds, people shouting angry things around crowds, incentivizing violence, creating more conflict. This can also really put a great deal of stress and pressure on the banking system. Now, when this is happening, if you notice, Venus is conjunct Mercury, which is retrograding. So we are going to actually see that there is about to be some major changes going on, I think, with international trade, economic policies, things that are also going to be strongly kind of connected to immigration. And so Mercury is saying, actually, we're going to go back, we're going to make some changes to jobs, or we're going to make some changes to, travel regulations or some shifts in business, rethinking and reworking Venus. So it's good because it's saying actually it's going to be about bringing in more wealth, bringing in more stable relationships, focusing on forgiveness, being able to heal. But I think Mars and Uranus kind of squaring. Mars is like, no, I don't want peace, and it's going to be difficult to kind of find that. This is the classic, accident volatility aspect. So when this takes place, we are very much likely going to see some pretty significant sudden market drops, tech failures again, earthquakes, protests. And I'm just tying it all back to what's going on with the rulers of these two planets or the dispositors, and then also starting to look at some of the other themes where we have not got planets that are going to be cycling through Pisces before we get into Aries season in March, and it's a whole new ball game. So it will be the last thing to look at when Mars hits 28 degrees, which will be basically the, kind of like the end of the day on the 27th, the 28th and 29th, this is where Mars is going to hit 28 degrees. So it's going to be at the exact same degree as the February 2026 solar eclipse. You're going to see in mid-February, there'll be a solar eclipse at that degree. Also square Uranus. So when planets cross that degree point, like for example, when Mars hits it in late February, kind of July going into August when the North Node hits it, it'll reactivate some of the things that were kind of taking place right around this time. Now we're still within eclipse window, so it's almost like we have the eclipse mid-month and then Mars hits that and we're going to feel that reverberation of some of that pressure where Aquarius says, no, it's about the future and innovation and, changes that are kind of happening with the collective, versus where there is some financial, institutional, economic, banking resistance. Now the positive is that Aquarius is superior to Uranus and Taurus. So it's kind of beaming down, being like, we don't care. We're going to create so much pressure. We're going to create such like a ruckus that something needs to change. So we're going to see change that's going to happen pretty quickly, I think, between now and about April, May. Okay, so be mindful. I hope I'm wrong. I'm going to show you guys some of the transits that are going to be happening this week because we pretty much have a key aspect almost every day of the week. And as you guys are watching this on January 18th, you are gearing up for the Capricorn new moon. So let's look at this at 7 a.m. I'm Central Time here in Texas. So you guys may have to adjust your time zones. I know we have people all over. I've seen people who are like, in Hawaii that are clients. I have people who are in, a lot of people who comment from Australia. So thank you guys. I know you guys have to do everything kind of a little bit backwards because I'm behind you. But adjust your time zones. That's why you can always copy what's going on with the transits and you can kind of translate them into your real time. But as you guys are watching this on Sunday, first of all, happy Sunday to my Sunday crew. Hope you guys are having a good one. Thank you guys for including me in your Sunday rituals. I get so many cool kind of comments and emails from people who are like, oh my gosh, my kids and I watch you, or we listen to you on a road trip, or I take you to the gym, or I'm listening to you at the grocery store. So thank you for being that crazy woman at the grocery store who's listening to me. I'm glad to be here with you guys. It's a new moon in Capricorn. And if you guys have not seen my Capricorn new moon video, please check it out. Honestly, first of all, I can't really compare it to the other new moons of 2026 because this is the first new moon of 2026. But it is a kick-ass new moon. And I really recommend doing something with this energy because there are so many powerful, powerful transits that are happening as this new moon is coming together. Now, likely you maybe felt like, Friday, Saturday, you're a little grumpy. That's because we were in a dark moon phase. The moon was actually going through Capricorn and it was like starting to kind of calm down, get centered, get quiet. So it can really focus on this very powerful, potent kind of intention setting opportunity. Late degrees of a sign means it's now or never, right? So we see this new moon that's coming in at 28 degrees. That will be happening later, kind of midday. So we'll look at that. And it's got some beautiful, beautiful aspects. We see the moon's going to conjunct Mars, which is going to make us a little fussy around 10 a.m. Central Time. But this is good for communicating what our desires are and what it is that we actually want to achieve. And all of this is sextiling Saturn and also Neptune. So like there's this kind of businessy, corporate, business, career, power kind of energy that comes with Capricorn. But the sextile to Saturn and Neptune is like really opening the door to what can we envision, right? How can we ritualize? What are we meditating on? Like, are we creating vision boards? Like, what are we also willing to kind of focus on when it comes to our long-term goals? And in order to do that, what do we have to let go of? So do something with this Cap new moon. Sit down, meditate, make a vision board, write your intentions, maybe plant some seeds, work with crystals. Anything earthy can be good. And what's beautiful is that you're also going to be seeing that not only are all of these planets kind of meeting right around 26, which is a money degree. This is about banking and money, but it's trining Uranus. So it's also saying that there is opportunity for sudden reversals or changes with your physical, financial, or kind of like personal values. And that's like lightning. So yeah, I like the idea of setting intentions for, higher salaries, newer jobs, bigger positions, also feeling more secure and confident, embracing maybe taking charge of changes with our budgets and our finances, maybe opening the door to potential new investments or shifts in what we deem like valuable. So after that happens, then things start to change. So you're really going to be in that energy until the new moon hits It looks like that's going to be closer to right around like 1 p.m. Central Time. And then the moon is going to go into Aquarius. Okay, so that's going to be happening around 5 p.m. When it goes into Aquarius, it's a vibe shift because now we're not playing with like this Saturn, Neptune, and Pisces that's kind of dreamy and whimsical. Now we're looking more at Uranus, and Uranus is retrograde. And we're also going to see the moon come into Aquarius. It's going to hit Venus, which would traditionally or typically be like, oh, this is like so sweet and social and loving and it's fun. And some of you guys may be socializing this afternoon. You can do that. But the moon is going to hit Venus and Pluto, and it's going to start kicking up some of the energy, foreshadowing some of the more kind of underworld themes or obsessive themes, scary themes, you know, transformative themes that are going to be happening as other planets start to come into conjunction with Pluto. So the heat begins. It's obvious that in order to really embrace this new moon, it means that we have to really think about the future, and that in the future, you know, our relationships, our social groups, maybe our communities, maybe our goals are all about to change and transform. And so you might see something kind of get kicked off here. And I really feel like on Sunday, you know, the big transit is the new moon. You know, Mercury's trining Uranus, the sun and the moon are trining Uranus. You know, Mars is also coming into a trine with Uranus. So it's just about kind of being open-minded. Then we have the moon conjunct Pluto, Venus in Aquarius in the early PM hours. And you're going to see that setting up from about 5 o'clock Central Time. And then it's going to conjunct Pluto, and that's going to happen around 11 p.m. And then we're done. All right, so then we will move on in a second to the 19th. But really Sunday to me, even though most people don't work on Sundays, this is a day you actually want to have something that you want to get done, right? This is about serious intention setting in the morning. So it's perfect for planting your 2026 goals. If you didn't get clarity on what your kind of New Year's resolutions are, now is a good time to get clear about that. The afternoon shift feels like a wake-up call from what's kind of more dreamy and kind of being in the zone of working to like something that can definitely turn into a bit of like an electric spark in the evening. And there's sudden emotional like revelations that might start happening around that time. I think to navigate Sunday, set practical intentions early in the day. So if you're listening to this, when you're done listening to this, sit down, set your intentions for your new moon. Journal or focus on shadow work this evening. If there's anything intense that kind of arises, don't act on them quite yet. There's going to be opportunities to take action as we start to see like Mars coming into Aquarius later in the week. Now this is going to take us into Monday, which will be the 19th. And when we wake up in the morning, the moon's still in Aquarius. So we're still looking at Uranus. Nothing is really happening. I mean, obviously, you know, Saturn and Uranus are sextiling. So there is this need to kind of reflect on what has to go. And that might mean that there are some sudden changes in our physical, financial, or kind of, you know, like value kind of sense. But that's like a transit that's been kind of going on and off for quite some time. We also start to see now that Venus is getting closer and closer to Pluto. And we will see as the moon is going through Aquarius, it's going to in conjunct Jupiter. So we're going to see that when it's around 18 degrees. Looks like that's going to be over night hours. So you aren't going to see that kind of impact you. But late in the evening, the key transit is going to be the Venus-Pluto conjunction, 3 degrees. All right. So this is, other than the moon, the first like planet that's going to be coming into conjunction with Pluto, likely setting the stage for some of the other things that are going to be coming down this week. Intense on Monday night. I mean, the truth is that, you know, even though we have some other good energies that are happening, like Mars in Capricorn is now sextiling Saturn, we can be much more driven. We can also be much more willing to kind of release, forgive, create boundaries, be working in a way where we're navigating intuitively, and we're also maybe taming some of the Martian energy and not reacting to things too strongly. So that's going to help. But I think that with the Venus-Pluto conjunction, it's going to be pretty gnarly. And then in the evening, you're going to see the sun go into Aquarius. So Aquarius season is going to begin. So this is really where I think the daily vibe is really highlighting, okay, we're into Aquarius season. It's time to be a little bit more future-minded. We have to be maybe detached. Clarity can be a little difficult as we're starting to see planets that are sextiling Neptune. So it can also mean that there are some deep emotional undercurrents you have to pay attention to. And for sure, power dynamics in relationships will surface, although I think it's more likely to be on the internet. It's likely to be in the comment section. It's likely going to be happening also, you know, as you're kind of communicating and connecting with friends in person. And Venus rules women, right? So we can hear about a really prominent woman in politics dying, or a very prominent woman getting involved or getting exposed for some kind of financial scandal. Sex scandals are pretty common when we see Venus and Pluto in conjunction. But because it's at a 3, I'm like, is it going to be a female journalist? Is it going to be, you know, something involving like a woman getting hit or getting killed? Obviously, I hope not. Is it going to be connected to people making some powerful kind of predictions and forecasts about the future of what's going to be changing with finances and the economy? I think so. And pretty much on Monday, what you're going to want to start, what you're going to want to watch for is where this intensity is coming up in communication. It could be things you read, things you're emailing someone, a text that you get. And I think to navigate Monday, it's really about observing. I think that Venus is what we open up to, right? It's like a flower. So we have to open up to the fact that's like, hey, certain relationships may not necessarily be what we think they are, or that there can be something that is like shocking or sudden, but we need to know. So that way we can decide whether or not if this is like a good vibrational match. And this could be in a platonic way, it could be in a business way, it can be in a romantic way. Obviously, look at where Aquarius is in your chart. And do not react to things, all right? Because even Mars trine Uranus, people are going to have like this like lightning reaction. But I feel like that it's going to get ahead of it, and we're going to see some moves that are going to be happening by leaders or government to potentially get ahead of some of these other energies, because they may not be basing this off of actions, like people actually getting injured. They may base it off of, this is what's being said on online groups. This is what's being talked about. This is what people are chanting. This is what people are, you know, kind of predicting, or where people are going to be kind of like meeting. And you're going to see some kind of action that's going to try to get ahead of it. That's going to try to keep there from being like a further kind of like implosion of drama. So what you guys want to do is avoid possessive conversations, trying to nail somebody on Monday and being like, you know, are you going to do it or not? Is it going to happen or not? You know, or snooping through phones, going through people's information, you know, looking for something. I mean, this is going to be similar when Mercury comes into conjunction with Pluto as well. And Venus needs to be detached in Aquarius. It's like, you do you. Like, whatever it is that you want to do, that's you. I'm not going to take offense to it, but I'm also realizing that this may not be a healthy dynamic. This may feel like toxic. That can come up for some people. Definitely a lot of drama. I mean, when we see like Venus and Pluto conjunct, it's very similar to like Venus in Scorpio, or like even Venus retrograde, or Venus in aspect to Pluto. Betrayal, I think. And, you know, Aquarius is the public with the moon that's going through there. So there can be some major feelings of people being like, well, we've been betrayed, you know, or we've been sold something, or told something was like real and it's not. This is also playing off of Saturn. Saturn is the traditional ruler of Aquarius. And with Saturn conjunct Neptune, there's a lot of people who are getting angry and getting hyped over things that they're watching on TV, or they're seeing little clips on social media. And like, there are going to be things that are going to be put out over the next 2 weeks that's going to fit a certain narrative, that's going to intentionally rile up certain particular groups. And that could be certain demographics, it could be certain ethnicities, certain political parties, you know, certain genders, like literally knowing that it's going to incite some kind of conflict within certain groups. So be mindful of that you're going to start seeing that coming up. I do think that if this were me, I would just not try to push anything in a relationship while these transits are kind of taking place. Now, nothing is really going to be happening beyond that. As we're getting into the end of the evening, Moon's going to keep moving through Aquarius. It's not making any aspects, and Venus will be conjunct Pluto right in the late evening. And then this is going to take us into what will be the 20th, which is going to be Tuesday. And this is where we start seeing some more intensity that's kind of building now. So the Moon is continuing to move through Aquarius. You will see it come into a square with Aquarius. With Uranus in Taurus, excuse me. And when the Moon in Aquarius squares Uranus, that's going to be happening around here at a Gemini degree, 27. All right, so this is going to be 8 p.m. And in the span of that, you know, that's really the only aspect it's going to make. You will see it sextile Chiron, which I guess is helpful. You're seeing Venus start to leave the conjunction with Pluto. You're seeing now the Sun heading towards a conjunction with Pluto. And now Mercury is in Aquarius by the end of the day as well. So we got a lot of things that are happening on Tuesday. I would focus on the Moon sextile Chiron, because it'll sextile Chiron earlier in the afternoon before it squares Uranus in Taurus. And I think that the daily vibe with Mercury going into Aquarius, because that's also like a big transit, is just now there's all these new ideas, right? And probably, like, I think I said this in my Mercury video, like Mercury in Aquarius is one of my favorite placements, because I feel like Unlike Gemini, which can just be more about information, and then Virgo, which is trying to sort through everything, Aquarius is like, yeah, but what if the unlikely or the improbable is actually like the reality? Like, what if that is possible? What if that is the truth? It has a very detached, scientific kind of side to it. And I do think that with Mercury going into Aquarius, it's also playing off of this South Node energy where there's going to be some kind of talk or discussions about further changes, innovations, or kind of undoing or up-leveling things that deal with the service industry, animals, pets, things connected to food, diet, jobs. So we're going to be hearing probably a lot of people that are giving forecasts or kind of talking about, well, this is what the job market's going to look like, or this is what, you know, the economy is going to look like, or this is what the future is going to be. And it's going to be some interesting stuff, because anytime stuff's dealing with Pluto, you definitely hear from the billionaires, right? You'll hear people like Elon Musk, or, you know, the guy from Facebook, or you'll hear Larry Fink, or you'll hear all these major kind of, you know, tech related people making potentially some kind of like doom and gloom kind of prophecies about the future. And I would say the future is not defined, right? The future will be defined basically based off of our vibration and what we choose to kind of feed and give into it. So if we're assuming, well, okay, it's the end of the world, all these things are happening, what's the point? You're going to be disempowered and you're falling right into the Saturn and Neptune trap. Instead of that, I think it's really about kind of shifting our vibration and finding ways that we can kind of create some of these other connections and communities where maybe an individual feels overpowered, but if you have enough collective group of people who are like standing up and wanting to do something, you're going to see a cascade of change that will then kind of come from some of these conjunctions. Now, on Tuesday, brilliant ideas can flash with Mercury and Aquarius, but the nervous system feels fried. Okay, so keep that in mind, that there can be almost like, you know, kind of like overload, especially with the moon coming into a square with Uranus, that there is some kind of like friction. I also feel like healing conversations are possible as Mercury is coming into conjunction with the Sun and Pluto, and it can be in a group sense, so like group meetings or like, you know, team huddles or anything like that, even friendship connections and like finding ways to clear the air. If there's been a little bit of beef, you can do that. Try to handle things more in person, not necessarily from behind a keyboard. Now, there is still some irritations that will flare. So I think to kind of navigate on the 20th, it's really about speaking our truth and doing it calmly. The Mercury transit has not come into conjunction with the Sun yet, so it's still kind of being blown out. So we see Pluto's really close to the Sun, highlighting all of like the dark things that are going on in the world, and then Mercury is there, and you're just going to see like a lot of headlines are going to be bombarded with like a lot of Plutonian themes. My advice is take some short walks, right? Do your breath work on Tuesday. Try to, discharge some of the static energy. Do not absorb some of the things that's kind of in the air. And then in the evening, after the square that you see between the moon and Uranus, then you're going to start to see the moon heading towards Pisces, and it will kind of ingress overnight. So we are going to be then taking this to Wednesday, the 21st. And when we're up in the morning, the moon is in Pisces. Different vibe. Now it's playing off of Jupiter, and Pisces is about, water, the collective unconscious, our dreams, our emotions, sensitivity, anything that deals with forgiveness, healing, spiritual practices. And Jupiter is retrograde, so there is like a sense of reflecting or reassessing or turning within. Maybe we feel like we need a little bit more rest or we need some alone time. Moon's not really doing anything, so it will come into conjunction with the North Node. And this is a time where there is like fateful events that are taking place, and that's going to happen later in the evening at 9. And as it's coming into conjunction with the North Node, it's not really making any aspects. It's still a little too wide to trine Jupiter. It looks like it'll be doing that overnight into what will eventually be Thursday. However, we are going to see the Mercury Cazimi taking place this day. So the Cazimi is going to be when Mercury's conjunct the Sun. We get those like little whispers of like connection and communication and downloads, obviously from Mercury. And in this sign, it's interesting because we've got the Sun that's kind of in its opposite sign of Leo, so it's kind of debilitated in that sense. And then Mercury is conjunct. And remember, guys, Mercury deals with the South Node, so it's going to be really highlighting where, I will tell you, there is a possibility we're going to see some people who are going to be either involved in protests, or we're going to see some people who are going to be saying nasty stuff on TikTok or saying nasty things on Twitter, and they're going to get fired. And I remember making another video about that. I think I think it was when planets were conjunct the South Node this last summer. I was like, yeah, a lot of people are going to get fired. And it was like things that they were saying that was like angry and hostile on the internet. I'm getting the same vibes, right? And so I'm not calling out any one particular side. I don't really care what people are kind of wanting to focus on in terms of like the divisiveness. But if you are making threats, if you are saying things that are angry, if you are on social media, if you're writing things, if you're getting into it with people and wanting to have like hostile debates, a lot of people's jobs are going to be potentially on the line. And also we could see that there could be some companies that are going to kind of potentially kind of get hit in the crossfire as well. Now, when you have this cazimi, it's I guess in theory, this is about having like divine downloads. So spiritual insights that come from a dream, from meditation. It could mean you have an aha moment. And the mind is really supercharged with this like futuristic vision. So there is going to be like a pivot where you're going to go, oh my gosh, this is how I should do this. Okay, great. Now I move forward. But it's going to take a goal or a friend or a conversation or a community that's going to help direct you with where it is you need to go. In the real world, in mundane astrology, looking at Mercury coming into conjunction with the sun, it means Mercury is going to die. That's what it means. And that it's going to be purged and purified. So a public servant, somebody who is maybe representing, a big company saying, yeah, we're going to do a bunch of layoffs. It could also mean that there is the fall or a scandal or something that takes somebody off of, like a major platform, or somebody is making a huge statement in front of a crowd of people. And that cazimi is going to be at 1 degree of Aquarius. So it's also about military action and mobilization. That's why I said to you guys, I do have a feeling we're going to see something in this next week where they're debating whether or not they are going to have the Insurrection Act. I'm not saying I'm for it. I'm telling you, I think that that's what might be coming. And you might be hearing that there's going to be some announcements about whether or not things are going to be containable, at least here in the United States. But this energy is collective, right? That's what's beautiful about astrology is you could look at this living in one country and you'll see it kind of playing out in certain countries more, I think, in a more polarizing way or a more extreme way. But this is about people becoming very restless and wanting to get the truth out or wanting to say things that they feel like they need to say. Unfortunately, that tie to the South Node is like, well, that's not going to work, right? Or that's not healthy, or that's not actually going to incentivize people to want to work together, because it can come off as very harsh and very critical or almost like demanding because of the conjunction with the sun. Anyway, watch for the fall of a prominent figure. I guess that's something that I would say that's probably the biggest thing that I think that can kind of happen with some of the aspects that are taking place. Also, what we're going to see on Wednesday is there is going to be opportunities, I think, to tap into the fact that Mars is now between a sextile to Saturn and Neptune. It's building into that sextile with Neptune. So it's a good day to be like, okay, Pisces moon, I want to meditate. I want to create something. I want to do a vision board. It's really about trusting the intuitive kind of hits that kind of come through on Wednesday and writing them down or getting clear about what your goals are. And it's beautiful with that cazimi, because I think it's going to be some people that are going to be pivoting and kind of shifting like how they're investing or how they're spending money. All right, so if we go throughout the day, noon, we see it's building towards a conjunction with the North Node. That's going to happen in the evening. The cazimi happens midday, and then it's going to go on into the evening, and we start to see Mercury coming into conjunction with Pluto. Now, when here we go. When we get into Thursday, the 22nd, the moon is still in Pisces. It is going to be trining Jupiter, so this is a nice aspect where it does mean, because of the quiet reflection and kind of reevaluation and focusing on what we're visualizing, what we believe, our sleep, our rest schedules, we can feel more emotionally recharged. Great, love it. The other thing is that I'm pretty sure this is going to be the last time that we're going to see the moon coming into conjunction with Saturn and Neptune in Pisces. Let me double down on that really quick. Hold on. So that's going to be around the 22nd. I don't think we're going to see this again. Let's see. We're not. Okay. Just wanted to make sure. So a month from now, in February, when we see the moon come into conjunction with Saturn and Neptune, it will be in Aries. So in our lifetime, all right, this is the last time that we are going to see the moon coming into conjunction with Saturn and Neptune in Pisces. And I wonder, is this going to be crazier than all hell? Probably, yeah, we could definitely see that. Okay, let me go back to the 22nd. Sorry, guys, I'm all over the place. There we go. So for the last several years, we've seen a lot of this. And this is the last one. So by the time we get into like the evening, the moon's starting to conjunct Saturn, and it'll start to come into a sextile with Uranus all night. What is this ruled by? Jupiter. Jupiter's retrograde. So this is this collective release of fear, panic, worry, also like crazy propaganda. I think every time I've seen Saturn and Neptune and the moon in Pisces, like the last couple of years, it's always like there's just all these manipulated like videos or things that are like distorted or like things that are like conspiracy-esque or stuff that's kind of going on behind the scenes, and it leaves people feeling lost and confused and not knowing what's going on. Not a smart move for that to be happening when the sun's coming into conjunction with Pluto, but there could be like a lot of collective mourning with these conjunctions that are setting up. Anything else going on the 22nd? Nope. Mercury is in conjunction to Pluto. We also see that Mars is now sextiling Neptune, 29. And the moon will continue to keep moving through Pisces into the evening. So watch your dreams. Like I think a lot of you guys are going to have some really significant dreams, or like this would be a good time on Thursday night to be like, I'm going to take a bath. I'm going to take a soak. I'm going to sit in a sauna. I'm going to do some meditation. I'm going to drown out some of like the negativity that's kind of going on, because a lot of people are going to feel kind of like scared or frantic. And then it will conjunct Saturn and sextile Uranus overnight. Now, when we wake up on the 23rd, if you're very early in the morning, 6 a.m., you've got moon conjunct Neptune. So you might be sleeping in, hitting that snooze button. But come about 8 a.m. Central Time, the moon's in Aries. Very different vibe. Positive is that the moon's at 0 degrees of Aries, which is a 0 degree cardinal point. So this is where we see a lot of action taking place. We see Mars now at 0 degrees, which is moving into Aquarius on the 23rd, and they are sextiling each other, where individuals feel like they want to take action, they want to be inspired, they want to get moving, but Mars in Aquarius is quite chaotic, right? Right. So when we get to Thursday, pretty much, Friday, this is Friday. First thing in the morning, I think it's a very different energy. Like we're Thursday the 22nd with some of the conjunctions. Okay, Mercury and Pluto were conjunct, intense communication, or like we were getting word that something is happening. But it was more Thursday's like deep emotional processing. And yes, there's some possible confusion and compassion overload. And we're more focused on, okay, gentle music, self-care Thursday night, art, water rituals, maybe escapism. And then boom, we get into Thursday and we get into Friday and everything's very, very different. So it's going to be very night and day. I like the sextile between the moon and Mars, because I feel like it's where we're feeling like we can get up and at them and go after our goals. But what I'm not crazy about is that the Sun-Pluto conjunction is still lingering. It was actually starting up on Thursday night, and it didn't perfect until very early, around like 4 a.m.-ish on the 23rd. So the Sun-Pluto conjunction is technically happening on Friday. We also see that this is the very last moon transit in Pisces with Saturn in Neptune. That's pretty significant. And then we move into the later day, and we start to see the moon in Aries then sextile Pluto at a 3. Individuals are feeling supercharged and wanting to be transformed because there has been some radical thing that's happened, and everybody's kind of talking about it, or it's impacting communications, or like I said, travel. And then the moon is going to start coming into a sextile with Mercury, which is good for communication Friday in the early evening, like 5 o'clock. And then the moon's going to sextile Venus, which is going to be happening like around 10 p.m. Because it's still an Aries moon, it's tying into the fact that Mars is about to conjunct Pluto. So like the week ends on a very kind of intense like level, because now we see the last planet that's going to come into conjunction with Pluto. So basically, more or less, like the energy is really, really going to surge on Friday. Maybe courage returns with the moon in Aries because we feel more bold and independent. But that tie to Pluto and Mars coming in conjunction has a very dark edge. And so it feels for some of us like it's a cosmic green light to be more bold and take some kind of action, and we're ready for change. I would say on Friday, try to channel like aggression into something that's productive action, or getting involved in a cause or something that you believe in, or something that you can be a part of, or where you can make a change in something. Working out, starting a project, advocating for something or someone is definitely encouraged. Just keep in mind that, it's not your typical moon sextile Mars, like, oh, go and get them. It's like some people are just going to have a lot of anger with Mars and Pluto coming into conjunction. And a lot of individuals are going to get kind of sucked into kind of like the hive mind. All right, so this is then going to take us into Saturday, which will be the 24th. So let's look at that. And in the morning, now we have the moon continuing to go through Aries. And you're going to see throughout this transit, the real action that the moon is going to be having is a square to Jupiter, which is going to make individuals feel more agitated, inflamed, or courageous, bold, willing to take changes with expanding on their emotions, their home, or their past. We know that Moon-Jupiter squares make everything feel bigger, and the moon is connected to Jupiter, so we have to reflect on our emotions before we act. And the moon coming into conjunction with Chiron is also going to be definitely bringing up some wounds for us on a personal level. Once again, tying it back to that kind of Mars-Pluto conjunction that's brewing. So this makes me feel like there is this fiery initiative on Saturday. We are meeting with some old wounds. We may notice that we feel a little bit more impatient or defensive, and it's about not just reacting to things on Saturday. I also think that this is a good idea for a lot of people to be really trying to, bring in some kind of gentle movement. So it might be walking, might be biking, might be cycling. It can mean that this is a great day for therapy or just honest self-talk and healing through action, but not reaction. Now you're going to see the moon come into a square first with Jupiter, and that's when things are going to feel bigger. And that'll be right around 4 p.m.-ish Central. And then in the evening, it's going to conjunct Chiron at a 22, right around 11 p.m. Okay? Nothing else is really happening on Saturday. Saturday, for the most part, is not entirely too bad. And a lot of people are going to listen to this. They're going to be like, oh my gosh, do I want to do something Saturday? I'd be like, yeah, you can. With the moon sextile, these planets, you can totally do something on Saturday. It's just probably better earlier in the day. Then we move to Sunday, which is going to be the 25th. And we see the moon in the late degrees of Aries. And then it's going to still be picking up that energy of Mars, which is now kind of like 1.5 degrees. And then it's going to go into Taurus. And that's going to be happening in the early afternoon hours. Now, this is going to be an intense day. Because not only do we have the moon going into Taurus where it wants to focus on resources and values and stability and money and food and pleasure, but it's going to come into a square with Venus and Aquarius. So there's going to be some disharmony between, well, this is what I want to eat, or this is what I want to spend, or this is what I like, versus this is what my friends want to do, or this is what other people want to do. And we're also going to see this is the first quarter square. So post the Capricorn new moon, now we have the first quarter square, and it's going to be happening in fixed signs where we're going to kind of feel like we're at a crossroads. And that moon is going to first come into a square with Mars around 2 p.m. on Sunday, Central. Then Pluto, where there is some intensity revolving around words and communication, and potentially where there is some financial kind of fluctuations or fallout depending on what's going on with like group mindsets. And then we're going to see the moon and the sun square at a 6 around 11 p.m. And then overnight, it will come into a square with Venus. So Sunday afternoon into Sunday morning feels quite intense. Like if this were me, I would say if you have to pick a day to go and do something socially, I would probably do it on Friday night, to be honest with you guys. I think that Friday night, maybe even early Saturday is okay, but Sunday is not my best kind of making plans, going and doing things with people type of day. Let's see. So what else do we have going on here? So first quarter moon is known as crisis in action. So we've got all this Aquarius, which is like basically, okay, this is the future. And Taurus is like, well, how does it impact me physically or financially? And they're not seeing eye to eye. And then Mars is now approaching this conjunction point to Pluto as we're closing out the week. So tension then starts to peak quite a bit. And then if we look into the future, if we're looking into like next Monday, it looks like it's going to be closer to Tuesday that Mars and Pluto are going to conjunct. Is that true? The 27th? Yeah, I think that's Tuesday. So it's going to be like Tuesday afternoon, the 27th, that you guys are going to see this conjunction. So because it's within range on Sunday, you may have to go back and think about, well, what happened this week when Venus and Pluto conjunct? What happened when, Mercury and Pluto conjunct, when the Sun and Pluto conjunct? Because it's going to be some of the same stuff that's going to keep coming up. So we'll cover that next week. But just know that, yeah, on Sunday, that tension peaks and it's like this kind of stubborn, Uranus and Taurus not wanting to change, not wanting to make a move. The moon's going through there too. And then there's this other side that's like, nope, we're pushing forward to the future. This is what it's going to look like. And so the body can feel the pressure. Nervous system is really important whenever you're looking at Uranus transits or whenever you're looking at Aquarius transits. So a lot of people can feel like they're just, even if they're not doing a lot, they feel just like they're mentally kind of like on overdrive. So I would say on Sunday, make a decision to make one small deliberate change instead of explosive moves. And I would actually do that all week, but I think just with the Taurus moon, because it's going to need to kind of ease into change, it's kind of going, all right, well, what do I need to shift? And it's more with your finances. Maybe it's going to be with what you're eating. Maybe it's going to be some changes when it comes to your financial goals. Something like that is going to be happening basically on like the 25th going into the 26th with some of those squares. Naturally, when the sun and the moon square also, like there's like this sense of feeling kind of like discombobulated. So plans don't always go according to plan. So as soon as you start seeing, squares that are happening pretty much on Sunday afternoon, I mean, I would say from the time that the moon is squaring Mars. So that's from about 4 p.m. to midnight. 1 a.m. Like plans just aren't going to go according to plan. So, and a lot of it's just because a lot of people are like, oh, I'm doing my own thing. Or like, you know what, instead of doing something together, like let's all, let's just throw a party or let's kind of invite everybody, or everybody's going to kind of fraction off and kind of have like different things that they're kind of dealing with. And be careful about how much you get overly involved or consumed with some of other people's kind of mini dramas as well, right? Especially with the conjunctions to Pluto. All right, so on Sunday, ground, be in nature, eat healthy food, make sure you're doing something that's going to kind of calm your nervous system down, put your feet in the grass, get some time outside, and be open to making those changes. Now, for all of you guys, you should be, because I feel like I sound like a broken record. And unfortunately, when we go through like stelliums and there's a lot of planets going through one sign, we definitely see this. But I am going to be talking to you guys about what Mars in Aquarius means for each and every one of the 12 rising signs. In order to do this, I'm going to be looking at this from the perspective of the Western whole sign system. I'm a Western astrologer. I am not a Vedic astrologer. I'm going to be having you guys listen to your rising sign first, because that's going to tell you exactly which house Mars is going through. I'm going to talk about what Mars rules in your chart, and then we're going to kind of briefly just touch on the conjunction to Pluto and the square to Uranus and like kind of encapsulate what all of that means over the next 6 weeks as you go through this Mars transit. So if you happen to be an Aries, a Scorpio, or an Aquarius rising, pay attention. This is going to be pretty significant for you guys with this Mars transit. All right, so we're going to be talking to my Aries and my Aries risings. You guys are the first, right? That's what Mars likes. And Mars is moving through your 11th house where there's all these other planets. It's actually the last planet to kind of join. So the Mercury ruled charts, the Venus ruled charts, the Aquariuses, the Leos, the Scorpios, they're already ahead of you. Now you're ready to kind of join with whatever is kind of changing when it comes to your goals. Now for you Aries, the 11th house deals with your friends. It can be groups, networking, your future. It also deals with the first house ruler, which is you, yourself, body, and action. And also the 8th house ruler, which is going to be dealing with self, shared resources, anything that deals with investment, change, transformation. Now, you're going to see right off the bat, Mars and Pluto are going to conjunct, which is pretty significant for you because it means that you are going to have a very powerful meeting or connection with another person. It can mean there's powerful new alliances. It can also mean that you're cutting toxic ties with certain groups or friends. Towards the end of the transit, you'll see Mars coming into a square with Uranus, and this is going to be closer to March. And when this happens, it basically means that there's going to be sudden financial shifts as a result of some changes either with your goals or your social connections. I think it's about reclaiming your personal power and your vision for the future because Mars is going to be influencing Saturn and Neptune in your sign. And it's leading you to new collective groups and new opportunities when it comes to your self-esteem as well as investing. Good luck, Aries. Let me know what happens. For my Tauruses and my Taurus risings, well, first of all, if you have anything 0 to 5 degrees, you are feeling all of the squares of these planets. So hang in there, be the boss that I know you guys are. You're going to be seeing Mars going into Aquarius, joining all these other planets in your 10th house of career, your public image, your profession, your reputation, your responsibility. So even if you're not working or if you're retired, it's like, am I taking care of my family? Am I getting involved in city council? Am I thinking about, having like a side hustle or a business? Am I volunteering? And Mars has a strong connection to your 7th house of committed relationships, partnerships. So it could be your clients or business owners, mutual business owners. It can be your spouses, anything like that. Even like a relationship with a therapist or like like an astrologer. So as Mars goes into your 10th house, it's also picking up the energy of the 12th house. And this is basically connecting to things that are kind of hidden or subconscious or self-sabotaging behavior or things that kind of come out of left field. So when we put these two together, going through the 10th house, it's very clear that there's going to be like this subconscious willpower that's going to emerge to just take charge and be able to kind of like delegate tasks, go after the job that you want, give presentations, be more competitive in the workplace. But keep in mind that it is going to first meet with Pluto. So when it meets with Pluto right off the bat, this is about career transformation or power struggles with authority. Now, this could mean with parents, with cops, with judges. It could mean with a boss. It could also indicate that once it starts coming into a square later in the transit with Uranus that's in your sign, especially if you have anything, 26 to 29 degrees of Taurus, this is about you feeling like, I want to rebel against this. Like, I just need to break away. Like the pressure of work and responsibilities or the sudden changes are too much. I think that for Taurus and Taurus risings, already having Venus going through some of these degrees, you're already aware of it. This week, you're waking up to this and you're realizing that you can totally radically change your career or you can, make something bigger. You can climb the ladder. But because of Mars's connection with the 7th house, it could also mean that you're relying more on a therapist or an astrologer to help you kind of navigate this pressure. Or maybe it means that you're working with a spouse or a partner to kind of get a little bit of like downtime, or there is a kind of collective or a group that you're building so that way you can kind of steer the ship from behind the scenes. So set boundaries if you need to at work or with partners and really own your professional power. Good luck, Taurus. All right, my Geminis and Gemini risings. I think the air signs are going to really thrive with this. I'm not too worried about it. I think with the Mars transit going through your 9th house, obviously it's in a fellow sister air sign, so it's going to be friendly. Mars is picking up the energy of your 11th house of friends and goals, and also your 6th house of health and schedule or work. Mars going through the 9th house is bringing a lot of action when it comes to traveling, when it comes to your beliefs, when it comes to training, certification, legal matters, and higher truth. So by sign, it trines you, and also you have your chart ruler Mercury moving through here. So there's a lot of action kind of going on in this house. Honestly, I'm talking to a lot of Gemini risings that are like, they're planning their year and they're like, oh my gosh, I have all these trips planned, or I'm going back to school, or I'm in the middle of like a legal dealing and any of that stuff. Or there could be really a lot of action going on regarding, learning about health with Mars tied to the 6th house, or traveling with friends, or trying to manage your schedule and balancing work and also kind of like educational opportunities. It's possible that there's just deep psychological, there's this deep psychological overhaul in what it is that you believe in. And with that conjunction to Pluto, it can, for some of you guys, mean that there's some like pretty dramatic changes to your travel or your work schedules. Could also mean that you are having to confront some kind of issue or problem at work, and it may result in legal dealings. Obviously, hope not, but it can. And then you will see Mars and Pluto meeting, which is kind of mirroring a lot of that, or just a lot of surges when it comes to your, traveling opportunities or connections with friends. And then towards the end of the transit, it will come into a square with Uranus in your 12th house. So that tells me that there's going to be some subconscious breakthroughs. And I think it's just more teaching you more about being open-minded and like following a new belief system. So that way you can kind of like navigate some of the intensity that's going on in the world and still find ways to be able to kind of learn and travel and get around. And once again, I think it'll be easier for you. So just really focus on speaking revolutionary truths with Mercury going through that house, Mars kind of joining. Some of you guys will publish, you'll teach, or you'll travel with some kind of purpose. Good luck, Gemini. All right, Cancer and Cancer rising, you guys are going to be experiencing Mars entering into Aquarius in your natal 8th house. Thankfully, this is a house that both Mars and Pluto, kind of feel like they're at home because of the connection traditionally with Scorpio through the 8th house. So Mars for you is very much tied to your 10th house of career and your professional life or your status. It's also tied to your 5th house of dating, creativity, and self-expression, taking risks. So some Cancer and Cancer risings are going to find throughout this transit that there is like this fusion of the 5th house and the 10th house in the 8th. And it can mean that you're touching on or taking action when it comes to intimacy, romantic relationships, dealing with debt, tax-related matters, or money owed or loans. It's also very much kind of connected to this Pluto conjunction, which is about an intense transformation. And it can mean that there is new possible financial or psychological power dynamics that are kind of coming online. A lot of breakthroughs can happen in therapy with these transits. I find that like Mars and Pluto can be very much connected to trauma. So it can mean, trauma from your childhood or overcoming fear of intimacy because of a broken heart. It could also mean that there is this huge kind of power play that's kind of happening when it comes to somebody else's money. So if you're dealing with like a lawsuit, if you're dealing with an insurance matter, if you're waiting on inheritance, or if you're waiting for a windfall, it's starting the process of you being like, okay, am I willing to take this risk and see if I could potentially get a gain? Down the road, you will see this come into a square with Uranus and Taurus. So I think that's really going to be showing that there can be some group upheavals because of some big financial or psychological things that you're going through. It could also mean that there is just so many changes happening on a psychological level for you or a financial level that it is making you kind of reevaluate, who your true friends are, who you can really kind of connect with. For Cancers, I think it's going to be about reclaiming your shared resources and maybe clearing debt. Maybe it's going to be deepening or kind of releasing certain intimate bonds, and obviously embracing endings as a new beginning. Good luck. For my Leos and Leo risings, you guys are going to be experiencing Mars going into Aquarius in your opposite sign in the 7th house. 0 to 5 degrees of Leo and Leo risings are really being impacted by the transits that are happening this week. So sun, moon, or rising, pay attention. Oppositions are relational. Things are going on with other people outside of you, okay? So for my Leo risings, the 7th house rules partnerships and relationships. Your therapist, your astrologer, your spouse, your friends even, your clients even, your marketplace. And this is where you meet other people. And the sun's going through there this week, meeting with Pluto too. So like that Kazemi and some of the other connections you're going to see are very, very important. Now with Mars moving through there, it's picking up the energy of your 4th house of home, family, property in the past, and the 9th house of travel, education, belief, and also graduation, ceremonies, legal matters. So as Mars goes through the 7th house, we could say, well, there's a lot of action that's going to be happening in relationships. Yes, 100%. I think that the conjunction that it's making to Pluto is in a very big way also tied to the sun coming into conjunction with Pluto like a day or two prior. Okay, so think about what's happening just before that. When that meets with Pluto, there is this unearthing and either confronting a partner about a home or a living situation, or confronting family about, something and kind of getting it out in the open, or discussing where a relationship needs to change and how that's going to be impacting, what you believe in, or where you're living, or where you're going. And there is like a death and a rebirth happening in a relationship. And if you're in a committed partnership, you can be watching somebody just really going through a lot of change right now. So just try to hold space for that. Down the road, when Mars gets to the tail end of Aquarius, it will square Uranus. And that's going to be where, partners are needing to take action, and there's some definitive decisions happening in relationships and how that's actually impacting your career. So it could mean, pushing you to take on a business partner, to collaborate with a partner, to potentially launch a business with a spouse, or recognizing and realizing that your relationship needs a lot more attention, or, there's a great deal of clients and you may have to be kind of scaling back or changing directions with just how much you're actually doing, out in the world, because you have to be more one-on-one with another person. I do think it's about asserting independence in relationships, especially like when Mars and Pluto are kind of there, and attracting partners who match your future vision, right? I think, I would just try to recognize that you've got partners going through a lot this month and next month. And if you're not in a relationship, if you're single, it could mean just the relationship with your friends. It could also mean that this is pushing you to take action and there's more drive to kind of connect with partners. Possibility of seeing people from the past too, that can happen with Mars's kind of connection to the 4th house. Okay. Good luck, Leo. Quite the transit for you guys. All right, Virgo and Virgo risings, you guys are going to be experiencing Mars going through the sign of Aquarius in your natal 6th house. Mercury's moving through this house, so you guys are already kind of familiar with kind of the vibes of getting organized, focusing on health, work, your routines, and your pets. Obviously, Mars ties to the third house of the mind, communication, vehicles, short distance trips, moving, siblings. It's also tied to the eighth house of joint resources, intimacy, debt, transformation, and healing. So there's like this combination of healing the body through actions and routine with Mars in the sixth house, while simultaneously trying to do that so that way you can heal the mind and you can also like give the spirit a little bit of a rest. That's at least my interpretation. When you have planets in the sixth house, you get a lot of work done. So honestly, I don't mind having Mars going through the sixth house. I don't mind having malefics going through there because I feel like it's an easier house to kind of navigate. We want to give Mars a to-do list, and you may actually have to write things down and then execute them and get them done. This is also going to show you where your words or how you're communicating is going to come under the microscope at work. So the things that you're saying to coworkers, the notes of the emails that you're writing, stuff like that is going to kind of get lit up like a Christmas tree. And it may mean there's just a huge emphasis on work, getting things done, getting organized, or going back to the gym, working out, focusing on your health, or any kind of connection to productivity. So really watch for the opportunity over the next 6 weeks to radically kind of overhaul some of your habits. And that's because it's going to come into conjunction with Pluto first. So it's about your mind and your mindset and how you're communicating to really kind of help you move through some of these changes that's happening with your schedule, your health, or your office. And then you will see towards the end of the transit that Mars will square Uranus, and that's probably going to bring some pretty shocking changes to your beliefs about health or productivity or your purpose. So that's going to also change too. And maybe you might feel like you need to kind of bring in technology or new things that can help you focus on, organization and getting work done. So you have more freedom to what? Travel, right? To learn, to take courses, to do things that are going to be maybe even like on the job training. So there's definitely this big power up period of just focusing on how can we transform not only the workspace, but how we're working together. And you might see that there's like some mini power struggles going on with people at work. But if you revolutionize your health and your workflow, you're actually really going to kind of start to drain, like release any like draining obligations that you have to your daily routine. Good luck. All right, Libra and Libra rising. Like Gemini, I do think that you guys are going to like this transit. It's a little bit easier for you to navigate. You will be seeing Mars going through your fifth house of creativity, romance, dating, having fun, playing games, all that fun stuff. And it is traditionally associated with your seventh house of marriage, partnerships, and one-on-one connections, your marketplace as well. It's also connected to your second house of money, resources, and values. So Libra, especially if you have 0 to about 5 degrees sun, moon, or rising, this is trining you. It can be very empowering if you kind of navigate this the right way. Venus, your chart ruler, has already been going through here. This week, you're going to see Venus conjunct Pluto, so definitely kind of keep in mind that there's some profound changes kind of going on that involve either children, creative projects, self-employment, taking risks, dating. And now we're going to see Mars coming in there. So what's positive is that Mars is willing to take risks in the fifth house. It's just like, yes, I want to go to, I want to go to the casino. I want to get involved in trading. I want to get involved in crypto. It can mean that there is an incentive to have a lot more fun and kind of action with a partner. So if you're in a partnered relationship, there's a lot of like hobbies and creative things that are about to come up that can be really fun. If you're single, this is a time when you're getting out there, you're willing to mingle, and you have to go to the places where there's entertainment. So like, for example, the fifth house would be bars, casinos, entertainment places, theaters, where you're going to be seeing groups of people that are going to be kind of hanging out. And it does look like you could have a bit of fun. I would keep in mind that with Mars ruling your money and your relationships, you could be kind of taking some risks on these things. And so it can cause a little bit of drama because you are maybe spending a little bit more or partying a little bit more or having a little bit more fun. And a partner goes, well, why are you spending so much money? Or like, how much did you buy those tickets for? Or, wow, you've been having a good time. You've been going out a lot. You can kind of hear that stuff. I think the positive is that the conjunction to Pluto can actually mean that there's a seeding moment where you're creating something that could actually bring you a lot of wealth. It could bring you a lot of joy, but it's likely something that you're going to do with another person. I also think that this is about a creative rebirth. Yes, you can see some drama in love affairs if you're kind of dating and you're not partnered, or there could be some drama involving a child, particularly your first child if you already have kids. And then down the road, you're going to see Uranus start coming into a square with Mars. And it's going to be pushing on Uranus to kind of like revolutionize and open up something about your joint assets and money. So it's like a lot of Libras or Libra risings are going to either start side hustles, they're going to invest in something, they're going to start getting involved in trading to ultimately try to make more money. That's what I think. So watch for this financial surprises that can definitely happen later in the transit. And I think this is about taking bold creative risks, expressing your unique joy, doing it unapologetically, and doing something that's different. Remember, Libra, this is the same area where you're going to start seeing eclipses that are going to be happening here over like the next couple of years. So it can be like a creative rebirth, a new relationship, or honestly just becoming totally fixated and obsessed with a new hobby. Good luck. Scorpio and Scorpio risings. What's going on, guys? Quite the transit for you, as Mars is your modern day, your traditional ruler, and Pluto is your modern day ruler. And they're meeting up here towards the end of the week, Scorpio. So you're already probably seeing this week because like Venus is conjuncting Pluto, Mercury is conjuncting Pluto, Sun's conjuncting Pluto. Something big is kind of like happening on the home front. And I have a lot of Scorpio risings in my life. I've talked to a lot of clients with them recently. A lot of things like, okay, you know, some drama revolving around moving or dealing with a family crisis or situation or having to remodel a home. Potentially getting to the root issues of a problem, plumbing issues. I've heard a lot of that stuff. So it's going to depend on your whole chart. But if you are 0 to 5 degrees of Scorpio, sun, moon, or rising, you're under Pluto squares. So not only is Mars and Pluto coming into conjunction intense, but it's squaring you by sign. So really watch for that. Obviously, as Mars is transiting through the 4th house, you hear me say for all of the signs throughout the year, have a to-do list, because Mars can almost be like an intruder when Mars comes into the 4th house. And it can mean that you're either more focused on home security, and that could be like cameras or, you know, things that are kind of connected to being able to be on a network. You may be more focused and concerned with anything that's kind of connected to home protection. It could also be cybersecurity because it's in Aquarius. If you have any important information or documents or anything that's of financial value that's connected to the internet, this is a week to really watch because you could see some issues here. And Mars is about fixing things or anything connecting with health, organization, or an office space, or it could be people coming in to like work on something in the home. And then also you are Mars. So I could see a lot of Scorpio and Scorpio risings being like, okay, I'm going to roll up my sleeves. Like, you know, I've got things that I have to fix around the house. Know your limits. There are some things that Scorpio risings can fix, and there are other things that I would say if you don't know what you're doing, if it's electrical, if it involves something sharp, if it involves something hot, be very careful because you're very prone to nicking your fingers, sawing things off, burning things off. This could be while you're cooking. This could be anything that's also connecting to like working on stuff. So if you're hammering or working on things or trying to do stuff, like just know your limits. If you can't do it, leave it to another person. With that being said, that other person being in your 4th house could be somebody who comes into your home and you're like, oh, it's just like a person setting up cable or it's somebody fixing something. Do not leave them alone because I could see some energy where something is getting swiped from your home. Obviously, I hope I'm wrong. And keep a lookout in the neighborhood. You can see some people who are kind of like weird, who are kind of like looking around or going door to door. Don't be opening doors to people that you don't necessarily know. Keep your security systems on. I do think that there could also be some really intense communication that could be happening either between you and another person you live with. So it could be a spouse, it could be a family member, it could be a neighbor. But watch for some kind of intense communication with some of these people and issues that involve pets, particularly like pets that are getting like burned in the kitchen or like are potentially ingesting something that's poisonous. Once again, I hope I'm wrong, but I just want to tell you all the potential things that this could be. Now, down the road, after you see Mars and Pluto conjunct, which is happening towards the end of this week, actually, after that, we're then going to see a square to Uranus in your 7th house. And so Scorpio and Scorpio risings need to know that there's actions being taken on the home front right now, or there's things that are being said that are in the home. And right now it's being seeded, but within several weeks' time, when it squares the 7th house Uranus transit, your demeanor, your attitude, your frustration, or your motivation is going to be a make or break situation for relationships. Some of you guys will move and then you'll move in with partners by the end of this transit. Others are going to find that they're in existing relationships. They're getting really frustrated about a whole matter, a family member matter, some parent drama. And it's going to create a lot of pressure in the living situation, and it's going to create a lot of stress with a committed relationship. So Scorpio risings can actually push certain people away throughout this transit. They can also find that there's a lot of home power struggles. This puts some pressure on a relationship, and we know that Uranus rules your 4th house, so it can push certain partners to the brink, or there could be some make or break situations going on with family relationships. Scorpio, the job here is to look at this transit as a whole. It's not just this week when we see planets conjunct Pluto. Go out further. Think about what's happening next month with the solar eclipse that's going to be there, that's going to square Uranus. Clearly, you have a lot of goals and things that you're wanting to work on, either emotionally or on the home front. And it looks like you want to be really focusing on bringing in partners that can help you do that, and trying to be more understanding of like the pressure that some of these things that are putting on other people who are trying to kind of support you. So release ancestral patterns, claim your inner security, and definitely try to keep your cool as you're going through some of the Pluto-Mars stuff. All right, Sag and Sag rising, you guys are going to experience Mars transiting Aquarius in your natal 3rd house, putting an emphasis on communication, the mind, anything that deals with traveling, learning, gadgets, siblings, short distance trips. And Mars is connected to your 12th house of the subconscious and what's hidden or self-undoing. It's also connected to the 5th house of creativity, children, and self-expression. Saggies, Mars going through this house, I think, is really finding your voice, right? And we've kind of talked about that in previous videos, but I think that this is about recognizing where sometimes fear can get the best of you, or that there can be things that you're thinking about, that you're concerned about. You don't know if you should say something or not. You don't know if you should, ask the questions. You don't know if you should bring up some uncomfortable or inconvenient truths, maybe with a friend or a relative or a neighbor, but it may come up throughout this transit. Now, the other thing to think about is that Mars has this kind of connection to want to drive fast, say things quickly, make impulsive decisions when it's in the 3rd house. So things like, oh, I'm going to run that yellow light, I can make it. Or I'm going to say, this thing to my sister and just give her a piece of my mind. Or potentially, like texting and driving would be another one, I would say, with Mercury being there. Maybe it means that you're finally overcoming your fears of, speaking up. It's just, there are some things that you're going to do like impulsively. And I think it's going to be how you're thinking and what you're saying. And this really puts an emphasis on relationships, either with siblings or with neighbors. So watch some of those relationship kind of connections. You will see Mars and Pluto come into conjunction. So it's possible that you are going to want to give somebody a piece of your mind, or it's possible that you're saying, you know what, I've had enough social media, I'm taking a social media break. Really recommended for Aquarius and Aquarius risings throughout this transit, if that's something that you need to do for a mental reset. I do think could also be that there's just an immense amount of power being put into learning a language, starting a blog, launching a website, creating a content, kind of schedule, or something that's media related. That's going to be something creative. And maybe it's about that there is some harsh words that come out, but it's because you feel like you're not feeling happy or joyful, and you don't know how to quite express yourself. For you guys, focus on empowering yourself through communication, how you're talking to yourself and how you're thinking, because there could be cutting conversations and like I said, giving somebody a piece of your mind, and then things can kind of blow up. Now, also be very careful when you're driving, be mindful when you're walking around. This is really, really, really significant. It does also kind of connect to Uranus, and Uranus is in the 6th house. So it does talk about health relating to the lungs. Or anything with breathing, also like your hands, your arms, and your fingers. Some of you guys can be having like some nervous tendencies with that this week, or you're really focusing on learning about better health and habits, and you're trying to kind of implement that into like your work routine. Sag, I do think that I would watch when we start seeing Mars squaring Uranus, because there can be some unexpected issues that can be kind of coming up that is like disrupting your work routine, or it could be some health problems because a lot of just like negative mindset or worrying about things. And it's going to require you to really pay close attention to your nervous system. So like with Uranus in your 6th house, I would say whole foods, Bach essences, maybe working with, an herbalist, or maybe working with aromatherapy, rolfing, massage, all of these things that are going to kind of calm things down. So you're not letting your mind like get the best of you. Wonderful for speaking revolutionary ideas. So if you want to write, if you want to create a podcast, if you want to teach, this is a time to really focus on that and not kind of get distracted by all the other intensity that's kind of in the air. Good luck. Capricorn rising. You guys are going to be experiencing Mars going through the sign of Aquarius. It'll be moving through your second house with all of these other planets, connecting you to your money, your values, and your self-worth. So money in the bank, possessions that you own, your spending ability, and how you feel about yourself. I always tell people, because I have the same stellium in my second house, Sun, Mercury, Mars, and Pluto. It took me a long time to realize, like, you're only going to get paid as much as you believe you're worth. And so you'll find that so much shifts when it comes to your financial situation in life when you start upgrading and up-leveling and realize what you bring to the table. And when you're investing in yourself and you're taking better care of yourself and you're also knowing your worth, your relationships are going to improve, you're going to make more money, you're going to have more opportunities, people are going to respect you. So this is going to be a lesson that's getting seeded very early on as you go through some of these transits. Now, Mars is directly connected to your 11th house of friends, goals, and networks. It's also about wishes, and it's also connected to your 4th house of home, family, and property, and the past. So a lot of your goals are about, well, I want to make more money. Why? Because I want to move. And I know a lot of Capricorn risings are telling me, I want to move to another country, you know, Saturn, Neptune going into your 4th. I want to find my dream piece of land and build my house. I want to create a compound for my family. You know, I want generational wealth for that, whatever it is. So Mars going through here is really kind of gangbusters with all these other planets being like, okay, it's time to really be hardcore invested in, you know, like where I see my future going. The positive is that I think that between this buildup of energy and the eclipse, there could be a lot of really good money and financial things happening for Aquariuses. You know, you'll see the solar eclipse next month that'll be there, highlighting like, yeah, the money's going to come, but it's going to come in some unconventional form. So yes, a lot of Capricorn or Capricorn risings might kind of play with crypto. They might start really thinking about also really tapping into their talents and trying to create their own businesses because it is influenced by Uranus. Or maybe they're taking chances. Maybe they're focusing on, you know, making a business that they can do with their kids, or maybe they are going to be taking some financial risks, or maybe they're getting into gambling. Not advising that, but I could see that. I've seen from quite a few Capricorn and Capricorn risings, now they're coming around to the idea of looking at alternative kind of currencies. Now they're coming around to the idea of being like, oh, I could be self-employed. And I think a lot of you guys are going to be willing to take these risks, just especially knowing that Saturn and Neptune are also going into your 4th house. So money is wanting to be made because it's wanting to go into a house you're going to buy, something you're doing with your family, something that's going to involve changing your living situation. So Capricorn, this means that when Mars and Pluto come into conjunction, there's this fusion of your 11th house and also your 4th house in the second. And you go, you know what's freedom? Freedom is having land. Freedom is having, you know, nobody around. Freedom is having a roof over my head or being able to take care of my family. And there's going to be this like idea that's going to kind of pop up. This is also about transforming income streams or value. So you have to transform it. So some Capricorn and Cap risings are going to go, well, I'm afraid to, you know, like invest in something I don't know about, or I'm afraid to tinker with cryptocurrencies, or I'm afraid to take some of my savings and spend something. But you're going to have to be willing to take some of these risks if you want some big reward. Now, towards the end of the transit, you know, Mars will come into a square with Uranus, which means that there is going to be some massive creative or financial shocks. And so I would almost say to Capricorn and Capricorn risings, be careful what you wish for. You know, you might be wishing to win the lottery, and you might win the lottery, and then you're like, what do I do with this now? You know, or you might be wishing to start a family or have a kid, and then suddenly you get pregnant. Or you might be wishing to, you know, be able to make it as a baker or an artist or a jewelry maker, and then all of a sudden the money comes in and you can do it, and it's like, oh, well, how do I do it? There can be some really good surprises that can kind of happen. I think about when I went through this transit, when Uranus was going through my 5th house and it was scoring all my second house stuff, and I was like, this is crazy, but I love doing this stuff. And like 14 years later, I'm still doing it. So probably one of the better risks that I ever took. And it didn't make sense at the time, but I think for you guys, you could definitely justify getting involved in some of these things if you feel like it's going to bring you some kind of pleasure. So things you're creating, things you're eating, things that you're making or sewing, you're going to enjoy doing it. So just kind of follow your bliss, take the risks, reclaim your worth. And this is about innovating your earning, maybe investing in some crypto or some tech. I don't know. We'll see. All right, Aquarius and Aquarius risings. Woof. Can we get a check-in with you guys? I've noticed like over the last like week and a half, like I have a lot of like return clients, but I've had a lot of clients that have been like, can I see you like tomorrow? And they're all Aquarius risings. And I'm like, oh God. Of course, the pressure cooker is on. You guys are the frog that's been in the pot, and really you've been in the pot for the last month and a half. It's just now finally the pressure is being cooked up because now you have all these planets that are coming into conjunction with Pluto in your sign. So I want to get a roll call. How are you guys doing? Mars rules your career. It's connected to also your purpose, your visibility, your status, and the third house of communication and visibility. It's also about writing, blogging, sharing, learning, moving, driving. It's the mind. So this is Aries, how I think, how I speak, how I assert myself. Well, all eyes are on you. I think that, having Mars and Pluto conjunct on the ascendant, I have watched in recent years some late degree Capricorn risings go through that. There's definitely been a few cycles where you guys have had that, and it's always been a time of empowerment. That's how I've seen it, especially for the Saturn-based signs. It's almost like what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? So you may have to channel your inner Mr. Chow and be like, but did I die? No, but you will look back at this period in time and you will go, that's when it all started. And there is this very uncomfortable kind of breaking out energy. It's like Mars and Pluto creates this intense amount of like pressure and like force. And so you may feel like you're being forced to undergo some pretty dramatic physical or emotional or psychological changes. It's not comfortable. It's literally like going through like labor. Like that's what it probably feels like for a lot of you guys who have had kids naturally, that you're just like, oh my God, it's coming in waves and this is a lot. And it will pass. But this is the emergence of, well, I have all of this power. What am I going to do with it? So if the first house is like your identity, if this is also your body, your expression, and it's connecting to your 10th house ruler of authority and career and your 3rd house ruler of communication, this means that when Mars and Pluto are conjunct your ascendant, first of all, watch your driving, watch your words, be careful with anything hot, with anything sharp, be mindful that you are one of the prime candidates that can potentially be having an outburst or having an accident if you're just not aware of some of these Pluto energies, which is demanding. A lot of you guys are going to find that you're being very rigid over the next week or two, that you're either saying, no, I won't change, I won't give in, I won't do it, I'm not working with you, whatever. Or you're going to find that this is about you transmuting it and being like, yeah, I'm upset and this is really difficult and it's uncomfortable. But remember, like I said, keeping your head and your wits about you, being cool under pressure. You know what's happening internally, and it's been happening internally. Now it becomes more visible. Anything with heat or rash is something else that I watch for. Like some of you guys might notice there's like heat stuff or like rashes or like dry hands. And yeah, watch your words. So when it conjuncts Pluto, this will be that major personal rebirth. And then towards the end of the transit, it's going to square with Uranus, which means it's like you going against your own planetary ruler, being like, guess what, fam? You know what? We're moving out, or actually, I don't want to stay here, or it's time for us to consider getting out of the house. Like you're going to feel very restless, and you're going to be resisting, although Uranus will be direct, some of the changes that are needing to happen at home, right? And you might feel like you have to be like the person who's the driving force in the family to be like, are we getting things done? Are we packing up? Are we moving? It could also mean you get to a breaking point and you're like, that's it, we have to actually make this change. And it's a sudden pivot that's either going to happen with your home or maybe your family situation. And you may see that actually start to kind of unfold later in the next month or so. I think that I would just watch for the home upheaval. Step into your authenticity. Yes, you're going to be a little radical. Yes, you're reinventing yourself and you're still kind of figuring it out, but lead by example. If you can use that Mars-Pluto energy to channel higher truths or your intuition. I mean, I've seen people go through these transits in their first house and like, I have seen, trigger warning, people who have been suicidal with these transits. I have also seen people who go through these transits that go through radical transformations and they look completely different months and weeks after they go through these conjunctions. Or they will say that was the turning point, that everything changed. And then you start to see that as like a catalyst when you have like this little mini personal revolution that you're kind of going through, and then it starts to impact everything else in your chart. I do think for you guys that if you can do this and if you can channel this wisely and focus on being a leader rather than being a little bit more of like a dictator, which that can happen with Mars and Pluto here, you're going to get a lot further, and you're also going to see breakthroughs in just how you're communicating and connecting. Some very powerful energies are going to channel through you. Even sometimes some stuff that's like supernatural. I've seen people when they're having Pluto on angles here and in the 4th house too, that they'll start feeling like they're seeing things, they're hearing things, like their psychic senses kind of peak up. So I'd be curious if you guys are experiencing that. Good luck with the birth session. All right, so we've got Pisces and Pisces risings. Thankfully, you guys are experiencing all of this revolutionary energy, like I said, in your 12th house. Now, Mars is deeply connected to your second house of money, resources, and values. It's also connected to your 9th house of legal matters, education, travel, your belief systems. And when Mars goes through the 12th house, it's interesting because this can disrupt your sleep. It can mean that you're feeling like you need to kind of like reorganize your closets, or you need to kind of, reorganize or move things around in your bedroom. It may mean that you're wanting to clear stuff out. So that could mean concerns over finances, concern over security. You may be willing to spend money to travel and go to a foreign land. You might be studying something that's like occult related or something that's like spiritually related. Shamanic practices and like drumming is actually pretty great when you go through planets in the 12th house. Especially in Aquarius, like I've seen a lot of like Pisces risings recently who are like, oh, I'm going to go and do like medicine ceremonies, or I'm going into this shamanic retreat, or I'm going to be doing like a 3-day, intensive kind of like, yoga retreat, that kind of stuff, where there's collective groups and they're meeting in foreign places and they're going to be purging and clearing things out. Otherwise, Mars going through the 12th house means that there are some things that are kind of coming through the ethers that you're kind of absorbing and picking up, which can make you feel less than secure about yourself and also your money. It can also question or make you question kind of your beliefs. I'm glad to hear that a lot of my Pisces and Pisces risings are like, we just observe and then we're not really absorbing. We're just absorbing what's going on, which is where you want to be. I would watch for nightmares. It's pretty common when you have Mars going through the 12th house, you could have nightmares or sleep disturbances. I would like burn a candle, or I would like smudge my space and kind of like call in sacred space in your bedroom and kind of keep that energy clear so you're not having some of that gnarly kind of like past life stuff that's coming up in your dreams. I also think that this is a house of secrets. It's a house of surrender. Obviously, it's connecting to Uranus in your 3rd, so you're surrendering to things that maybe you already know, you just haven't admitted yet, or you haven't spoken out loud, or you haven't agreed to. And there can be hidden power struggles when Mars and Pluto are coming in conjunction in the 12th house. It is also the spiritual warrior energy. So work up a sweat, dance, focus on having some kind of drums or percussion or heat. Maybe it's a good idea to be trying to kind of do meditations that are about kind of like invoking and calling in, deities that are going to have some kind of protective energy, or swords or something like that, fire even. And keep an eye on your health, because there can be a lot of like feeling exhausted or kind of run down when planets go through here. And there can be, with the conjunction of Pluto, like this spiritual warrior energy that's kind of setting up. And then later in the transit, when it squares Uranus, it'll manifest as like communication shocks and things where you're like, oh my God, I knew this was going to happen, or I had this dream, or I wrote this down. And like you won't be able to be surprised that some of the changes are actually kind of coming. The theme is really working behind the scenes. And if you can release some of your old fears, trust in some of the divine timing and the things that are kind of happening, you're going to find that you're actually moving through this, I think, pretty smoothly, and it's not going to be impacting you guys. Let go of any concerns that you have about physical or financial security. I think that's part of it. And also be shifting your mindset when it comes to manifestation. Like, this is a good week or two to go and listen to some Abraham Hicks, get into the vortex, start focusing on what you're calling in, not being too focused on what hasn't kind of shown up yet, right? Good luck, Pisces. All right, guys. Well, I mean, honestly, I really wish I had like a mask or something from Halloween, so I could have just like worn like a skeleton mask or something as I did this entire presentation, because I feel like it's going to be a lot of Pluto energies. So remember, this is a week of purging. This is a week of releasing, trying to focus on love over fear and not necessarily getting too swept up in some of the collective kind of chaos. Thank you guys for joining me. I think that this is going to be a week that's going to teach us whether or not we're going to be able to help us evolve, or if it's going to potentially destroy some things. So stay grounded, stay conscious, move with intention. And if you guys want to see more about me and my work, if you'd like to book a personal reading with me, I am booking in April and May and June of 2026. So if you know that you're an Aries or a Taurus or a Gemini and you want to get a birthday reading, click the links below. You can head over to beyondtheveiltarot.com. I do it all, solar returns, we do relocation readings, I also do natal chart readings, composite charts, election dates, and transit readings. And it's a combination of what I see with tarot and also the astrology and intuitively what I can see. So check that out. I'd be happy to work with new clients. I also have digital transit calendars that are on sale on my website. You can also find that I have a few spots left for my Astro 301 signups at the end of the month. I'm back after 2 years of not teaching, and I'm going to be teaching my advanced techniques, teaching you guys all the secret herbs and spices and how I use kind of different prediction methods in my private practice. So I hope you guys join me. It's going to be starting soon. And don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Leave me some comments below. Let me know what was your Pluto moment this week. Come back to this video, and I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about and kind of review next astro weather next Sunday. So we will be talking about that next Sunday. All right, so until then, stay safe, have fun, and enjoy this week, and I will see you guys all back here very soon. Take care.